Good golly, does it get warm. Okay. How's it look?
I'm gonna say good.
I'll take your word for it. Let's see here. Hello, PenCap. I'm starting to remember that name. Oh, I even have a function to, I guess, oh, it wants me to sign in. My goodness. I actually don't know my Gmail password, believe it or not.
I believe it.
Hmm. Got it. Yes, confirm. Yes, it's me. Perfect. That should cover it, I think.
Great.
Or it's just not going to work. Okay, fine. Yes,
PenCap is always on point here.
What is?
PenCap is always here. The first one.
He's always here.
Yeah, I like it.
Hi, PenCap. Are you ready to learn about... We're talking about ENTJs today. So, talk about ENTJs and what to look for, where to find them, and whether or not you should even make the attempt at talking to them. I say the same thing about ENTPs. So,
Yeah, say it's always worth to find an ENTJ.
no?
It is always worth it to find an ENTJ. Always.
Always worth it. I'm not sure why
Always.
it would always be worth it. You need someone to grow your business for you, and where they stand to make a lot of profit off of it, then absolutely, you can get for go for an ENTJ. Let's see. None Yo Business asks, can you explain extroverted thinking a bit? Yeah, I sure can. Let's go ahead and pull up. Let's throw that over there. I like to first talk about the actual MBTI definition, which most people aren't aware exists. Let's see here. I just had it.
It's in the typology chat. Or you know what? I'll send it to you.
Ah. So what do we got here? Extroverted thinking seeks logic and consistency in the outside world, concern for external laws and rules. So what that let me translate that into real life for you. Everyone using the same logic about things. So pre-established societal correctness. So for example, you go to school, you crack open a book, everyone expects that what's in the book is correct, like most people do anyway. And so the kinds of people that have a strong preference for extroverted thinking, they want these accredited sources of information. And it's not because they care whether or not it's correct, but they care about what other people think is correct. Now, of course, the reason for that is that if you can get a hold of this information, absorb it, you can then move on with your life, get other things done. The same goes with, having a lot of money. Most people believe that having a lot of money, logically, is very, very good and is considered successful amongst people. So that's why you find a lot of extroverted thinkers really are just very concerned about money, because that's, for them, that's objective success in life. So In the case of, let's say, the ENTJ is all about finding that accredited knowledge that's going to get them, the things that they want, which for most ENTJs, they think a little bit further than just, okay, have a lot of money and have a successful career. They, having that introverted intuition in the second position, they want to keep pushing that further. They want to keep going forward. So it's not just, yeah, having a lot of money. Yeah, sure, big deal. For them, it's power, authority over people. That's what they really try to shoot for. They're always looking for more power, more authority. Now, granted, you can get a lot of power out of having a lot of money, obviously. And so that's usually the first, goal on their list is do something to acquire a great deal of money. And then from there you can move on. Let's see. Hello, that guy. Naturally amplified. Yuck about extroverted thinking. Yeah. Someone with 4 lines and a heart as a name. Hi, how you doing?
That's cookie dough.
Cookie dough. I remember.
Yeah.
Someone named Cookie
A
dough.
sweetheart. Yeah, we typed it. She's a sweetheart.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I believe you. Why not? Today's background game is World of Warships because I like ships. Not just, old-timey ships, but, World War II ships. I also enjoy spaceships or, ships of really any kind. People have asked me why it is that I like ships. And I realized at some point in my life that ships are pretty much your home. And so you can essentially take your home anywhere, explore any place, and you'll always have home with you. All the amenities that you would need, well, depending on what timeline we're talking about. Obviously, if you're on an old-timey ship, the 2 most important things were some kind of vitamin C related fruit, and to ward off scurvy, and of course rum. So, which seems fine to me, but as for all the amenities, obviously you would want something like a spaceship nowadays that has all kinds of fun things like toilets. Let's see. So we're talking about ENTJs today. We're talking about let's talk about their function preference. We already started with extroverted thinking, a little bit into introverted intuition, but that is their second function, introverted intuition. So just as it is for every other person on the planet, introverted intuition is the focus on one's own goals, plans, ideas, ambitions, tasks, objectives, etc. That's your own personal path moving forward, and focusing on that. If you've got a high preference for it, so first or second position, then you're probably already doing fairly well in life, depending on your age. I don't suspect there's going to be many introverted intuitives that would care to watch a live stream unless they were in their 30s and their career was already laid out and they were just vaguely interested in someone else's ideas, logics, and expressions, opinions, etc. Nunyo Business says, this is Bob Saget. Hi, Bob. How do we stop
She's an
scaring away
ENTP. She's a female ENTP we typed.
Oh, right. I remember that one. So, for an ENTJ, they're all about that maximum speed in getting to where they want to go in life. Most certainly, their whole life revolves around objective success. That's more or less how you now. There's a little bit of counterbalance there, as you would think that maybe INTJs would be roughly the same. And INTJs have a different. Now, granted, they want to have money, most certainly, and a lot of them do shoot up in the careers. But they have this fun little function in the third position called introverted feeling. And so, what their own morals, values, expressions, opinions, etc., those are more important to the INTJ than it is to the ENTJ. So, for an INTJ, they just want to have their life and get it the way that they want to get it. And so that doesn't necessarily mean that they're always going to shoot for CEO. They're not always shooting for a high place in society, like a politician, president, whatever. They're not always shooting for that, but they are always trying to make whatever situation they want better than what it currently is. So even if their life is to just be, let's say, a computer engineer, and have, a lot of money, well, they're going to, a lot of money, of course, being subjective, but let's say they start out as a goal of 75,000 a year. Well, they're still going to be wanting more. And so even though they're a computer engineer, they're still going to be trying to move up in that position, maybe end up switching jobs to another engineering job that pays more, those kinds of things. So they're not always that way. However, an ENTJ, they don't have a lot in the ways of personal feelings. Now, granted, they may have some feelings buried deep down there, but they keep them there. They don't want them to come out and be a major part of their life. So things like morals, ethics, principles, that's not really as important as it is, as the extroverted thinking is, getting that objective success or what other people would consider to be successful. So they don't really care how they get it. They just want to get it. Now, with their introverted intuition, they'll make a decision on what they believe their best skill set would be in terms of making it to the top. But for the most part, they don't really care. They're going to keep moving forward. So long as it gives them that success. Speaking
Bob,
on what?
I was gonna say Bob is asking where to watch the movie or TV character that represents ENTJ. Watch 50 Shades of Grey.
50 Shades of Grey is a pretty decent example of how a ENTJ would behave. Also, Christian Bale in American Psycho. That's a good one too. Do ENTJs experience empathy? I'm sure it's possible, but I would say no. It's not something they often care about. Feeling what other people feel, that would take some practice. That would take some time, and spending time learning how, learning to feel what other people are feeling. Not as important as, let's say, making that board meeting so that you can advance your career. So
Yesterday I was talking with Bob. I see that she asked a question about this, about how we prefer a third function. I was telling her that's our advantage function. So she's just asking, like, why would that be? Is it because it's the same as introvert or extrovert characteristics, or why would we prefer it?
why would you prefer a
Your
third
third
position function?
Yes. Or do we have a preference for it?
Well, you would have a preference for it so far as it gives you, it helps you, it helps your other two functions. That's as far as it typically goes. Now, as you get older, you may decide to experiment with it more, maybe try preferencing it a little bit more, thinking about it a little bit more. But realistically, that third function is just there to support the first two. So, for example, an ENTJ, let's say they're on their way up, they're trying to make it to CEO someplace, right? So their whole life is about meetings and networking and figuring out which advantages they can get a hold of in real life so that they can keep moving up the ladder. Okay. Well, what's the third function doing? Well, that's extroverted sensing, the practical, the here and now, the concrete, the the raw data that's around you. Well, that means that they have they put a lot of thought into how they look, how they, their physical capabilities, doing things in a more practical physical nature. So they're not, extroverted sensing being essentially the opposite of extroverted intuition. So worrying about the more practical things like taking care of your body. So ENTJs exercise. They care about their physical appearance, most certainly a lot. More importantly, their physical health. So that's very important to them. Once again, we can go back to American Psycho, Christian Bale. His life was about meetings, talking to people, screwing people over, whatever, so that he can, keep moving up to become the best, or, to be above everyone else. However, when you're not doing that, you're going to fill in your time with other things to make you essentially better, I wouldn't even want to say complete. It's just something to better yourself. And so in the case of extroverted sensing, well, they look at themselves and say, well, I could also get stronger, more healthy. So they exercise. And so when the ENTJ is not at the board meeting, you can find them in the gym, for whatever, period of time that they have. They like to, they're going to dress well. They're going to dress in a way that lets people know that they are important more often than not. So that's an example of using the third position function to your advantage. Now, there's other things involved with extroverted sensing. So you might be wondering, okay, well, what would be the downside of having a higher preference for extroverted sensing? Well, when you're always thinking about extroverted sensing, you're just constantly thinking about what's going on, the good and the bad. And so if you are deciding that a need or a want right now is more important than the future, then you're more apt to do that. That's why, for example, ESTPs, they're not always wondering about the practical moves that they could be making every which way. They sometimes just go on a whim. They'll spend money and go someplace on a vacation, or they'll just drop money to have maybe a tool for whatever trade they're in. Maybe buying a new computer, or just going out and getting new clothes, things like that. Things that aren't necessary, but that's what they enjoy, is focusing more on the extroverted sensing aspects of life. And so, but for the ENTJ, for a third position function, you take the good and you leave the bad. And then your other two functions, take over. For me, it's about, manipulating conversation for good or bad. It's not always a negative. I know that manipulation has a negative connotation, but I've gotten really good at it. INTJ, their introverted feeling would help them with their goals and plans. Well, it doesn't necessarily help them with their goals and plans. It at least tells them it's a present part of their psyche, and so if this doesn't feel right, or if I don't think I'm going to like this that much, then they, cross it off the list and they go with what they want, what they like, even though money is still important, and following whatever their personal, plans were in life. As long as they do that, then that's the important part. So why do many people either think they are ENTJ or have met one? Because no one knows the system. That's almost virtually no one does. They have their own understanding of MBTI, and they come up with these definitions for cognitive functions. And if we were to use those definitions, then all of a sudden ENTJ goes from being one of the rarest personalities to, let's say, 20-30% of the population, going by whatever their definitions are. And obviously that's not correct.
We were talking about this like 10 minutes ago, actually, about how some people are saying, like, I've met ENTJs, and we both were like, well, where are they? We haven't seen them.
Yeah,
because
yeah, go on.
Because I spend like a lot of time in these corporate meetings and events that I go and visit doctors or like CEOs, and they're always around. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I've ever spotted one that I was like, oh, that's an ENTJ. It was more like, oh, that's an ESTJ. A lot of them are just people that have been doing what their parents did before them, or their family. So they're there.
Yeah, a lot of them just follow society's plans and moving forward that way. ESTJs, most CEOs, for example, are going to be ESTJs. Your assistant managers, your general managers, managers in general. A lot of them are ESTJs. Now, it's not that it's because ENTJs don't want to become managers. Usually that's a stepping stone on the way up, for life, for becoming super successful. It's just that there's a lot more ESTJs, and they're usually wanting the same spots. Let's see. What are they getting confused about in your option? Well, in my option, they get the idea that because someone's successful, that must mean that they're an ENTJ. They wear a suit and they tell people what to do. Therefore, they must be an ENTJ. Well, a lot of people can put on a suit and tell people what to do. There's a lot of people that can pull that off. So they get confused. A lot of people just go off of stereotypes. And of course, not only are those stereotypes, generally wrong, and they're stereotypes for a reason. But they're also getting the wrong stereotypes. Like, for example, the stereotype that INFJs are super empathetic and can just feel what everyone else is feeling all the time. That's a stereotype, and that's actually a stereotype for INFPs, not INFJs. But they got labeled as INFJ related traits. So Joseph E says he's got to go. June, I haven't spoken to you in a while. Make the how to spot an ENTJ video already. I definitely need to do that. Might bring in more views. Things haven't been super great in life lately, so I haven't been able to focus on that. I know you don't know much about Enneagram, but people say an ENTP can't be a type 5, which is very detached and impersonal, and ENFPs incapable of being detached with the world, are ENFPs incapable of being detached with the world. Anyone is capable of being detached from the world. It's all about circumstance in life. Everyone can do that. There's varying degrees of how much they enjoy being detached from the world. I don't often find myself enjoying being detached, but for the most part, I've more or less stayed in this room for months. And I maybe go outside to go to the store, chat up somebody for a short period of time, get my beer, and then move on with my day. Some people don't mind it as much. INTJs, for example, I've found that they're usually better with it than other people. As an example, ISTJ is often the same. But yes, ENFPs are capable of being detached with the world. Probably not for a long period of time, but they'll have their moments where nothing's quite going right, and they're just gonna say no. That to heck with all this. I'm just gonna stay in my room, work from home, and I'm gonna do whatever I feel like doing that particular day.
I don't necessarily think that I detach from the world just because things are going bad. It's because I call those my creative months. Right? If I'm speaking with someone, I can't. Yeah, it's creative months. If I'm speaking with someone, I can't just write or I don't know, just listen or read a book, because then I have to constantly be paying attention to the needs of the person that I'm with. Mm-hmm. And if I do that, then I feel like I'm not taking care of them as I should be. So when I get that chance to be like, okay, these 3 months is for myself. It's more like I'm using it to actually do something with my life. It's actually something that furthers where I want to be in life, or just because, hey, I want to write, so I'm going to write these 3 months, and I enjoy that time alone.
There you go. They all have their moments. Let's see. What functions are they getting confused, though, to think they are an ENTJ? Well, most people don't understand how introverted intuition manifests in real life at all. The best they can do is look up whatever the theories were from some other third-party places, or they'll go to Jung directly and read up on his work and then try to interpret to the best of their ability. The fun part is that MBTI kind of already tells us what that function does. Now, mind you, it's MBTI. We're not talking about Jung. We're not talking about, there was some guy named like Bebe or something. I don't know. We're not talking about any of those. We're talking about MBTI. From the website, their definitions. That's what we're talking about. And so a lot of people don't understand what that is. In most cases, you go to a third-party place, and they'll write you this 2-page essay on what introverted intuition is, and it does not once tell you about how that's supposed to manifest in real life. And it's all theory. They don't give you a relatable example as to how that function manifests itself. But if you just read the actual definition, from the website, which of course I have multiple copies of on my Discord, always floating around somewhere, introverted intuition tells us it's ideas. What was it? I had it up for just a second. That's how much I pay attention. Looks at consistency of ideas and thoughts with an internal framework. And then, trust flashes from the unconscious, which may be hard for others to understand. But how that manifests is your plans, your goals, your ideas. And so if you've got that in the first position, that's what you're always focusing on: your goals, your plans, your ideas. And of course, as you can imagine, they're about themselves. And let's see, is it because the MBTI tests are trash? Yes, all MBTI tests. Well, I'm sure there's got to be one out there. One MBTI test that actually correctly associates your answers with the right, cognitive function, but most of them don't. Most of them assign the answers to completely wrong functions. But more importantly, what really makes them bad is that people type in the way that they want to be or would like to see themselves as versus how they actually behave. That happens a lot. Good thing I have a job that forces me to go to work and interact with people, or I'd probably be a hermit. The people aren't always fun to be around. As I said, for many months, I have more or less exiled myself from in-person society. I've just been here working on a YouTube channel, working on videos, things like that. Now, of course, I wouldn't mind going outside maybe to actually have fun with people, but I don't really live in a place with people around my age. Most people that live in this town are around I think like 60 roughly. So does your fourth function start to develop, grow later in life? Well, your functions are always developing, all of them, as we get older. Certain life experiences will give you access to these tips and tricks with using certain functions, and so really it's a matter of circumstance as to which functions are going to be maybe more developed than others. But we know for certain that the way you live your life is the first two functions, and then your third function is supposed to be this supported function. In my old age, I learned the value of introverted sensing. I understand where it's important. I understand why it can be important, but I can't force my brain to all of a sudden have a much stronger preference for introverted sensing, to use it more often than not. Doesn't happen. I still forget things constantly. I barely remember the people that I type. And certainly when it comes to consistency and routine, that's out the window. I'm not interested. It not only am I not interested, I don't even think about it. It just goes right past me. One ear and out the other, as they say. All the tests I made gave me the right type. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's see. Because you are able to see... Why is that heart just there? Go away. Because you are able to see that you are a complete separate person, you can be alone. It's feelers, in my opinion, don't know the joy that comes from solitude. You can find joy in solitude, but most people don't. As generally speaking, most people will tell you that humans are social animals. They're meant to talk and engage with one another. But that's more on a bell curve. So most people are within the standard deviations of things, but there are the outliers. There are some people that can't go a day without talking to a bunch of people, and there are some people that would rather just not talk to people whatsoever. Can you trick yourself to like the fourth function? You can say that you like the fourth function, but especially when I'm typing people, someone can tell me that they have a preference for a certain function, but then when I ask them those questions that would be associated with that function, they'll say, well, I don't really do those things at all. Very rarely do I actually do them. So you can't all of a sudden change who you are to have a stronger preference for using those functions. You are who you are. And that has everything to do with your brain, essentially, how your neurons are wired, etc. So realistically, you can't just trick yourself into doing it. Can you type Jordan Skalansky? If I'm pronouncing that even remotely correctly. I'm sure I could type any person so long as they are alive and can talk to me. Or I have some way to know their inner thoughts. A detailed account of their entire life, for example, like in a book, people tell me that certain characters like Benjamin Franklin or Alexander the Great were ENTPs, but realistically, I don't know them. I'd have to read about Benjamin Franklin's life for the most part to really give an accurate type on that. So I assume that I could type Jordan Sklansky, assuming that I had an appropriate amount of information on him. So what about when you are uncomfortable? Can you preference a certain function then and suppress another? So I'm uncomfortable. Animals, and of course I include humans in that, but most animals, when they're scared just generally frightened, upset, or uncomfortable, they go back to what's comfortable. They find it. And that's what most people do. So if they're in a situation that they're not sure they can handle or deal with, they revert to who they normally are. They will use those preferences because that's the preferences that have gotten them through life. You've had to evolve and adapt around your personal preferences for living life. And so that's what you're going to go to. But however, it's a good question because there are a lot of preferenced introverted feelers in today's society that have had to kind of try to suppress their expressions for introverted feeling so that they can survive. As an example, so like we live in a more streamlined, logical society. It's been it's been trending in that direction for a great deal of time. And so ENFPs, ESFPs, for example, they have had to start really using that extroverted thinking a lot more than normal. I mean, they're still going to, preference doing things that make them feel good, but they're going to have a more solid grasp on how extroverted thinking works. It's not even that you look to your dominant function the most, it's that you can't help it. Whatever function is in the first position, that is not something that you can change. That's how you live your life. You are that function. You are the embodiment of that function. So if you have a lead preference for extroverted sensing, you're going to be about concrete things that exist in reality. The raw datas, the hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, seeing. That's how you're going to live your life for the most part. Like, let's say 80% of your day is centered around extroverted sensing, whether you realize it or not, because it's not something you can help. You have to notice those things. So you don't consciously have to look to that function. It's automatic. Now the second function is the one that usually people try to actively focus on, but it's always going to be through that filter of whatever the first function is. What do you think of people that call INFPs the worst type and useless? I assume that they are people that have had personal experiences with INFPs and they didn't appreciate it. Or with people they think are INFPs anyway. Because I just assume that everyone is wrong about the people they type. That's been my experience over the past 10 years. Is everyone's wrong almost all the time.
Yeah, so I think this comes more from a specific YouTuber that you and I know, and he always says that the function stacks of the INFPs are useless, like they should be people that don't exist, and if he could get rid of the types, he would get rid of that one.
Well, I've had a few people tell me that they're just useless or whatever. They're not useless. Now, granted, I'm 35. Now, most of the people that say that INFPs are useless, they're well under the age of, let's say 21, 22. So they're people that barely know anything about MBTI in the first place, and they certainly haven't had a lot of life experience. And so they just come across an INFP, and then the INFP starts talking about feelings or wanting to know about their personal feelings. And they're like, no, I'm 18 years old. I'm not interested in feelings. I'm doing other things. Go away. And so they start to, get that impression that all INFPs are that way and that INFPs serve no purpose. Well, in reality, though, INFPs a lot of them are actors, book writers, short story writers. Of course, they're therapists. A lot of them seem to enjoy psychology. Learning more about the human mind. Now, of course, it's not their own personal information on the human mind. It's of course, books and text and whatnot. I'm sure they do their best to find correlations between what they read and real life experiences, but INFPs might be useless to you in the moment, but they're a part of society that keeps it running. So my big problem with INFPs is that a lot of them want to talk about morals, values, ethics, principles, etc., which is fine if we're getting to an answer. Some of them like to just come to me and complain about their life. and they don't really want to receive an answer. They don't want to look for a solution. They just want to talk. And that's where I start to tune out and then throw a game on or watch a show while they're talking. Like, if you want a solution, I'm here to help. If you just want to talk about stuff, there are other people for that that get paid money to listen to you talk. Like therapists cost like $100 an hour. Go talk to them. Or pay me, and then I'll sit there and listen and pretend that I care. Let's see. What type is the most susceptible to propaganda? Well, that would be introverted sensors and extroverted thinkers. They are more likely to fall into those categories. Introverted sensing being the most obvious one. It's programming, your level of programming, or being able to be programmed. Extroverted thinking, if enough people believe that this is logically correct, then extroverted thinking tends to follow that same line of logic. When I get stressed, I start thinking about ways to get me out of that mess. Yeah, and most people would. But what they're thinking about and how they're going to be able to do it, well, that comes down to cognitive function preferences. If you're an ENTP, there's very little you can't talk your way out of. There's always some kind of little lie that you can maybe stretch the truth a little bit to get out of things. But for other people, they use different things. Let's see. Have you ever considered that the type population online might be very different in the world, as in INFJs may be rare in real life, but much more commonplace in places such as Discord, Reddit? And that's what I tell people. I say, if you go out into the supermarket, let's say, okay, well, people you're mostly going to find, of course, are going to be sensors. Obviously, it's a place where all the types typically will gather to get the things that they need. So, you go to the Walmart, a super Walmart, or you go to a Payless, or wherever you go for whatever. And in those situations, yeah, it would be very rare, virtually unlikely. You could go into that store, every day for 100 days. And if you talk to every single person in that store at that moment, you're unlikely to find a, preferenced introverted intuitive. It's very unlikely. However, if you were to go to, let's say, a government building, in like a law enforcement agency, for example, all of a sudden, like maybe a third of the people in there are preferenced introverted intuitives. If you go in there, and you're going to find very little in the ways of, extroverted sensors, and probably not that many extroverted intuitives either. So it definitely depends on where you go. Now, on the online thing, I, of course, have been online talking to people about MBTI for 10 years. And I have met a lot of people that claim to be INFJ. They were not. And yes, I obviously have considered that, the online population is going to be different from, real life population, depending on where it is that you go. Most of the MBTI community online is introverted feeling and extroverted intuition. It's just most of it. It's a very abstract topic, and most of them are just interested in learning about the typology of other people. Now, I have had a fair number of ISFPs and ISTPs, of course, stroll through and talk to me there, and every time they tell me, I want to know more about myself, which makes sense. So when they're in their like early to late 20s, for example, that's usually when they come to me and they say, no, I want to know more about myself. And why is that? Well, introverted intuition started picking up. Most preferenced introverted intuitives, first, second position, they already know who they are, and they're not going to let anybody tell them who they are. Whether it's me, a psychologist, doesn't matter. Do you have an opinion on why most MBTI and socionics typist YouTubers tend to be ENTP and ILE? Well, I don't know what ILE is. I think that's so. Is it socionics?
It's also Xanax, is that Psychophosonic, something like that? It's the weird named one.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you have an opinion on why most MBTI and socionics typers and YouTube tend to be ENTP? Well, so far I have found that virtually none of them are ENTPs, so I can't realistically answer that question because they're not ENTPs. There are a lot of people that think that they are an ENTP, but to be an ENTP is something that they're not familiar with. They just take their own definitions of the functions, or they want, even if they have the right definitions, they just want to pretend that they are. They think to themselves, oh, yeah, I once, I spend a whole 15 minutes, 30 minutes every day just thinking about some kind of wild, weird stuff. Therefore, I'm an ENTP. No, 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 no. You're not. It's when extroverted intuition is in the lead position, as we talked about earlier, that's your life. That's everything is colored by this extroverted intuition, which means everything is a possibility. Almost as if real life doesn't either matter or is not noticed. Everything is something else. And that hits pretty hard for an ENTP early in life. And that's why there was a stereotype where they said that a lot of ENTPs don't really begin their life until they hit like 30. Because they need to figure out what they're going to do. Because that, once again, real life, the things that need to be done, paying bills, taking out the trash, anything mundane or whatever, is just not on top of their list. And so they end up kind of getting a little slower about it. I lied to my manager today to get out of trouble, but they're little white lies. Who does that hurt? Well, hopefully it doesn't hurt you. Socionics equivalent of an ENTP is, I guess, the ILE. And yeah, so as I was saying, most YouTubers that talk about MBTI are not ENTP. In fact, I haven't watched one. There was Melissa Talks, who wants to be an ENTP or claims to be an ENTP, and I didn't get that impression, and apparently most of the community doesn't either. Not that I care what most of the community would, I wouldn't agree with that just because they agreed with it. I would agree with it because I watched her. Everybody lies, so it's all right. Yes, everybody does lie. That is that's a quote of my favorite ENTP character, House. Everybody loves. According to Urchin. What?
I meant everybody lies, but I can't type.
Oh, okay. Well, that's understandable. I do more talking than typing in my old age. Let's see. That is why ENTP needs the extroverted feeling to appear human. Well, they need it so that they can use other people to keep them afloat in life. Like that's ENTPs have, of course, as most people understand, that they have a natural inclination to understand the human mind. And so that's one of the fastest ways to get what you want, is to simply get someone else to do it for you. And so as long as you're good at it, well, you can rely on it. Does that mean you are 5 years old now? Yeah, I actually, starting this year, I'm actually going backwards in age. I'm reversing, so I'll actually be 34 in October. So we'll get there eventually. Interesting, because I seem to notice most typology YouTubers tend to self-type as ENTP. They sure do. They do self-type as ENTP. It's one of those prestige types that everyone wants to be around or in some cases to become one. I've had a number of ISTPs, I've had ESFPs, some ENFPs tell me that they're ENTP. And that's not their fault. That's mostly, they don't understand that the tests are bad. So they take the tests, they type in a way that in most cases they want to be, and then they come up with an ENTP, and then they come talk to me about it. I'm like, no, you're not. Are ENTPs the cockroaches of the world? Maybe. I mean, no. There's way more cockroaches. There's too many cockroaches. If there was an abundance of ENTPs in society, then most of society would be burned down, literally, like on fire. So I think I'm an ENTP or a very disgruntled ISFJ. Well, ISFJs aren't gonna care about coming to a live stream about MBTI. They don't care. You're talking about a personality that has a very strong preference for introverted sensing, so their programming is more or less how they want to live their life. And unless MBTI was a part of that programming, they don't really care. They have people to take care of. They have responsibilities, duties. They're very conscientious, ISFJs. And so they're not going to waste a lot of time being here. Even if they wanted to watch and put me on as background noise, that's all it would be. They're not going to talk to me.
Hey, there are two ISFJs in this live chat or that come to your live streams.
There's an ISFJ that comes to my live streams. What?
Yeah, two of them. Headaches, the flame, and the guy who always has headaches. And Ari likes to put you as on background noise.
I've only typed one ISFJ since I started the Discord. One. And that person doesn't even care about MBTI. It was you that sent them to me just to...
She puts you on as background noise for the support.
There you go. And it's ISFJs, introverted sensors, typically don't care. They have other things going on. They already have their life planned out as to what they're supposed to be doing, and that's what they're doing. They're not spending that time here. What version of the MBTI theory do you use out of curiosity? I use the MBTI theory as my theory. Well, it's not necessarily my theory, but my starting point was the actual MBTI website. That's when I started really taking a serious interest in it. So I went to the website, read whatever I could, but then I eventually got to the cognitive function definitions, and then from there I tried to use those functions and see how they manifested in real life. So that was a lot of time theory crafting and then going out and testing it. And then of course I've interviewed thousands of people on it. I'm always typing people. That's what I do. If I go outside, I'm typing people. When I'm talking to someone, I'm typing them. That's what I do. And so that's how I was able to take theory and put it into, I label myself as practical MBTI. It's the stuff that it transcends the theory, and it's things that you can see in real life, relatable things. I figured that was my hook. How does it feel to be the type all these YouTubers want to be? It feels bad. Like I would easily, if I could, I would trade myself in for an ESTP. Easily. Like they go out and have fun. They still talk to people. You get all those cool social abilities, except you're more concerned about taking care of yourself and making sure things get done on time or whatever. Having a practical solution to living life. That's what they do. And so it's not great. Like being an ENTP is not the most pleasant experience in the world. In fact, many of the ENTPs that I have met, of course, they've gone through their drugs habits. They've gone through the alcohol. Some of them now, Cal, for example, he's on Ritalin. Imagine not being able to live a functional life without medication. That's not fun. It's not fun for anyone. So yeah, how does it feel? Feels bad. I mean, yeah, sure. I got crazy, fantastical ideas all the time, but when you're spending that much time thinking about what could be, about the possibilities, or just wondering about things that make no sense or what have you, you're not getting anything done because you're sitting there thinking about, you're just using your imagination, and fun for a little while, but eventually real life catches up to you. We need to program the ISFJs to like MBTI. You can try, but ISFJs have extroverted intuition in the last position, which means things that are about what I just described, all this imagination, fantasy, what have you, that's a waste of time to them. They understand it. They think of those things, but then they think to themselves, that's a waste of time. It's not going to help. It's not a part of the plan of the programming. Who knows if this is even real or if it works, and I'm not going to be the one to figure it out. So they just kind of sweep it under the rug. You're completely into standard MBTI. Interesting. Yeah, I tell people that I've specialized in actual MBTI. Anything that isn't this is not MBTI. It's something else that they have called MBTI. I just, I tell people that I'm still learning. There's always more stuff to learn about him. There's always those new situations. There's always these strange offshoots of personality types that you want to diagnose, things like that. And so there's always more to learn. And so even though I've been doing it for 10 years, I would say that I'm still learning some things. Usually it's about predicting someone's behavior, several days in advance. Like that's what you're, trying to figure out when it comes to personality types.
Guys, this is a great time to click on the join button on Discord if you're not on the Discord yet, and also to submit your application if you would like to be typed by the one and only Mr. Urchin here.
Mr. Urchin.
Yes, you get an official title when you're typing someone,
Oh, okay. So yes, there is that. We were supposed to be talking about ENTJs today, but it never turns into that. They're just like ask me anything streams, like every time.
Well, yeah, I mean, you start with a topic, and then we take it wherever the audience wants to take it.
So let's do some obligatory talking about ENTJs real quick. No, I think I've more or less covered it. How do you find them in real life? Here's the thing. I had someone who was it that told me they had an ENTJ friend that they talk to all the time?
No. I don't remember. Yeah. I don't remember.
I was like, no, you don't. I know that because you use the phrase, I talk to them all the time. That's how I know you don't have an ENTJ friend. ENTJs are about moving forward in their life and getting it done. If it's worth the time, then they do it. If it's not, they don't do it. So unless every time they talk to you, they were somehow getting moved up in their position wherever, or if they were, getting more money off of doing it, then no, they're not talking to you all the time. They would rather go exercise than have long conversations with you about nothing. So keep that in mind. So where do you find them? Most of the time, for most of us peasants, the only real time we're going to have any extended interactions with the ENTJs is in school. And we're talking like, K through 12. That's when you're talking to an ENTJ. That's most of the time. Because after that, they're gone. They're going to the prestigious colleges. They're immediately working for someone's firm someplace, or they've got a job lined up, and that's what they're going to be doing with their life. And they're not going to be spending time with you. So that's where most of us get to see them, is in school. Let's see. Do you believe in shadow types, loops, and grips in MBTI? Not in the way that they tend to describe shadow types, loops, and grips. They describe it almost like this Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde situation where something bad happened. I've completely changed my personality, and now I have all the experience of someone that preferences these functions. No, you don't. That's not how real life works. I have been sad before. I have laid down and cried before. I don't do it very often, but I have done it. Did I all of a sudden for the next, month, I was an INFP or something? No, I was not. You have moments where certain functions become more prevalent to you in that moment, but your mind is always trying to get back to normal. That's just basic psychology. So, and when it comes to these loops, like you can have a thought that may be more, that might have more of a preference regarding two functions. And so you might go back and forth, but it's not going to be your whole day. It's probably not going to be longer than 5 minutes. And then you go on with your day. You'll revert back to being a normal human being. So if these shadow type things, loops and grips do exist, it's for a very short period of time and could most easily be broken by just having real life come at you. You'll revert back to who you are. In one instance, I was having such a bad time with my life. I was having girlfriend problems. There were some money issues. Well, not really money issues, but I mean, I was wondering about where I was going to go next with my life to make money. And everything seemed to not be working. So you know what I did? I rearranged my room. One time in my life, I rearranged my room.
I can't see you doing that.
One time. I think I was like 26, 27. And I just stopped everything I was doing. You know what? I'm going to just rearrange my room. Like that was like the one time I thought to myself that I was acting like an ISFJ. I was going to reorganize the room into a better situation instead of just saying, to hell with it, and I'll just live how it is now. So there was one moment, And of course, it didn't last very long. As soon as I was done with the project, I went right back to being me. So that's it. Let's see.
I can't even fault you for it because I've also rearranged my room one time.
There you go. Would you say that most sensing dominant types would be uninterested in MBTI and typology? Yeah, most of them are. Like I've got ISTPs, even had a couple of ESTPs in my Discord. And when they talk, they don't talk about MBTI. Some of them actually know about it, but they don't care to talk about it. You'll notice that they want to talk about anything else besides MBTI. And so, generally speaking, I wouldn't say that they're uninterested, because you can talk to an ESTP and say, look, if you learn this system, you'll be able to control the people around you. If you tell them that, they all of a sudden get interested. Now, is it for very long? Typically not. Maybe I think there was one that maybe I was talking to him about MBTI for a solid 45 minutes before the conversation went off into other things, like real life stuff. But I wouldn't say that they're uninterested. I would simply say they have less of an interest in MBTI and far more interest in other things. Far more of an interest. Who has long conversations about nothing? Well, you'd have to define what nothing is, because you obviously can't have a conversation about nothing, because then you wouldn't be talking about anything. So nothing productive, then anyone with a preference for extroverted intuition would love to carry on about things that aren't productive regarding real life. So
I would say at least our conversations are interesting, though, or at least a little bit interesting to us.
Well, I mean, you find them interesting.
Yeah, to us. That's what I'm saying.
But not everyone's going
to. Yeah.
Are most psychopaths ENTJs? I haven't met that many psychopaths, so I can't give you I say that not every psychopath is an ENTJ, but every ENTJ is a psychopath. That's what I tell people. Now, it's a little bit exaggerated, but generally speaking, yes, an ENTJ is going to come off as like an actual real psychopath. They're all about efficiency. You either have a use or you don't. I'm doing my own thing with my life, so get out of my way, and I'll do whatever it takes to make sure that you're not an obstacle. Which is, generally psychopathic behavior. But I always figured that there were ISTJs that could also pull that off. And then I suppose, theoretically speaking, an ESTJ living under the right circumstances would also come off as more of a psychopath. Let's see. How can I find more intuitives in real life? Where do the ENFPs and ENTPs hide? Well, an example being my ENFP brother. He works with the criminally insane. And he's planning on moving up from that as well. So he's usually working. He's taking care of a lot of people on his own right now. And so most of his life is, being that martyr and taking care of the people that he loves. So probably not going to find him in too many places. However, you can find them in most places where it's all about fun-loving, fantastical ideas and things like that. So I'd imagine that you would find a great number of extroverted intuitives in anime conventions, as an example. Some super nerdy stuff, Star Trek conventions, you could probably find them there as well. Star Wars, things like that. For an extroverted intuitive, they're usually trying to look for new, fun, engaging things. Now, that changes from type to type, but, for example, INTPs, they love new technology. They love, they're nerdy things, more sciencey, obviously. And so you could find a lot of INTPs in, like I said, like Star Trek conventions or tech expos, for example. You'd find a lot of them there. Me, I just like to go where, there's people, and typically people that I can have somewhat of a vague conversation with. So that can be anywhere. ENTPs and ENTJs are the biggest, but which narcissistic, borderline sadistic, and antisocial? Not even ENTJs are antisocial. You have to talk to people to get ahead of them. To get ahead in life. Like, you need to be involved with other people. Like, to make it to the very top, you have to be involved with other people, because that's what it means to be at the top. Is to be above everyone else. So they're not even antisocial. But which ones are narcissistic? Narcissism does, true, real narcissism where someone actually believes that they are the most important thing in their life or the lives of other people. You're looking for someone that has a strong preference for introverted intuition. Now you can come across people that seem to act that way, like they're entitled or whatever. But if you actually ask them about whether or not they are really truly that important, they'll break down and say, well, no, not really. I just want to be the most important. But for an introverted intuitive, they actually, on a core level, most of them believe that they are, in fact, the most important thing. Like their plans are the best, their logic's the best, they've invested the time, therefore there has to be that return. And that return should be that they know what they're talking about at all times. They know the best, plans and ideas. And so usually if you're looking for narcissism, you're looking for that borderline personality. I'm not even sure that that's real. I know that's a bit of a hot take, but I've found that in most cases when people say they have like BPD, it's people that may have some mood swings here and there, but realistically they're looking for an excuse to act in a certain way without the need to control themselves. So there's that. Sadistic and antisocial, couldn't tell you about which types are more likely to be that way. In terms of, it just antisocial means to not be social with other people ever. I mean, that requires a great deal of life circumstances to force someone to think or to behave in such a manner. And so that could happen to a great number of personalities. Yeah, but you are.
What if you're trying to get your life to be an antisocial life? Like, I'm actively trying. Well, we know what an actively trying is for an ENFP. We don't really try much.
If you want,
I'm really trying to go to a cabin in the middle of nowhere.
Well, all you have to do is don't get on stream with me anymore, and then just turn off your internet connection and stay in your house. There, boom, you've just perfected the antisocial lifestyle. Now, there's going to be consequences to being that antisocial, but you will have, in fact, created an environment in which you can be antisocial.
No. I want it to be a nice, pretty environment. That's why we're working towards the cabin, scenery.
Mm. Oh, you want to, like, live out in the forest with the unicorns and the fairies and
yeah.
Just live a life
with the elves and everything.
Well, then you're not being antisocial. You're around the elves. You're wanting to talk to the elves and things like that. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, traveling a lot for work. I work in consulting for a management company. I've had 45 different addresses and been on 35 projects. There is a way to ENTP that unfolds as you age. Most certainly, I think that virtually everyone gets better at living life, assuming they live that long. You are one person, and that is, but you are one person that is anecdotal. I'm 50, woman, married for 25 years. I have different expression of, is that SI or SL? I often have to take a pause, clean everything up, and go blow it up. And then go blow it up. That's good. I'm not sure what we were responding to, but not sure what they were getting at with that one. I'd like to respond to it, but I don't have enough context. Let's see.
We missed one. How do you tell the difference between an ISFP and an INFP?
ISFPs actually care about real life, whereas many INFPs get so sucked into the possibilities of how they feel or things regarding certain scenarios in their imagination, and so they end up getting stuck in their preferences. Well, it's just a natural way that unfolds in their life, is that when an INFP has those preferences, they don't just imagine how they might feel or other people might feel in certain situations. That's how they live, which is usually what makes them, which allows them to become excellent actors or actresses, because they're always testing and experimenting with how they feel and how other people might feel, and then learning if that's true or not, and then coming up with these nice categorizations for people, and then being able to emulate those behaviors because they've categorized it. So there's that. ISFPs, they are more about doing things that make them feel good rather than ruminating on things that make them feel good or bad. Let's see. Yes, I cleaned once. Yes, I did clean once, and that was the one time that I felt like I was being an ISFJ. Well, not that I cleaned once. I reorganized my room once, which of course did involve cleaning. But if you were to see my desk right now, cleaning is not something that I do often at all. But of course, I do have to clean it. That just things just get in the way, so you have to move some stuff out. But yeah, I don't suspect that when I'm 50 years old that I'm going to be any better at cleaning up my environment. As a matter of fact, assuming I live that long, that would suggest that I got successful in some business idea, and therefore I had the money to pay someone to clean up my environment for me. And it's assuming that I made it that far. But who knows? Also, are you naturally amplified? Are you saying that you're an ENTP and that you've been married for 25 years? How how is it that you stayed married for 25 years? I'm a little bit curious. The longest relationship I was able to have was about 5 years, and that's a very surprising feat for myself. So that's I would never let anyone touch my stuff to clean it. I've had people just, especially usually it's girlfriends that would be like, "Let me just clean up your desk for you." And I'm like, "No, don't worry about it. I'll get it to it." And then I walk away, and then they'll come in and clean it. And I'm like, "Well, damn. Maybe I'll get it next time." Those kinds of things. Well, yeah, I don't. Most people don't want to have other people deal with their nonsense, so that makes sense. Let's see. What type do you think would have the most amount of geniuses, and which type would have the smartest geniuses? I don't know what the smartest genius would be. And so I have a personal definition for smart and intelligent. So when someone, oftentimes this is the context in which it's used. When someone says that this person's smart, they're usually referring to their grades and the amount of knowledge that they have acquired over whatever period of time. And so knowledge is different from intelligence. Those are two different things. So I'm not sure what a smart genius would be exactly. Which type would have the smartest geniuses on average? So if you're looking for just that raw intelligence, the ones that come up with the theoretical physics, the ones that are leading the charge on quantum mechanics, things like that, well, then you're looking for INTPs. They are going to be there because it does require a level of consistency to be able to keep working on those projects, and then take something that was at first a theory and then actually propose it in a way that can function in real life. So typically your geniuses, like Albert Einstein being the more classic example of the INTP, that's where you're gonna look for it. INTPs. Let's say ESFJs. They gave that type on 16 Personalities site, the little guy with a smile and cake running around. I think that one's an ESFJ. I learned today they are kind of mean with their dominant. Yeah, ESFJ. I must have read that wrong. They're they are kind of mean with their dominant extroverted feeling, wanting to be the queen bee. They can be aggressive when it comes to creating an atmosphere. Most certainly, they want people to fall in line with whatever their programming tells them is appropriate behavior. So they can be aggressive. Not necessarily mean, and now of course they can absolutely be mean, especially when they're in high school. Like the mean girls that like to spread rumors and keep other girls out of the cliques and bring certain ones in. Yeah, that's your stereotypical ESFJ. Let's see. Got married at 25. Husband is 15 years older and had a lot of relationships prior. Well, you can have lots of variety if the person is interesting and has lots of their own shit going on. Well, yeah, it makes sense. So when they're off doing their own thing, then you can of course, do your own thing. But I assume that there's a fair amount of cheating involved in that, though. INTP for tech, yet procrastination INTJs get the job done. INTJs can get the job done so long as there is a, so long as the information's already been laid out. Then they can easily replicate it and then move on. That's the beauty of extroverted thinking, is you can take the work that someone already did and then you can use it for yourself to, get things done. So there is that, yeah. Husband spent about 10 years writing a book and is have to reread that. Husband spent 10 years writing a book and is a challenging to know ISTP. An ISTP that wanted to write a book, and well, I'm assuming that that's not their profession, is book writing. I assume their profession was something else, but wants to write a book. $20 on the Discord. You've got business. Spend the 20 and find out from the man and woman that are speaking here. Oh, thank you, Radiant Goose. I think that was it was shelling for my Discord. Thank you. So what about the first question? What type would have the most amount of geniuses compared to other types? Well, that's why I said INTP. Like, INTP have the most intelligent, but are geniuses most commonly INTP? Yes. End of story. INTPs. They spend way more time in their logic and then, of course, abstract topics. So that's where you're going to, just based on the MBTI math, that's where you're going to find most of your geniuses, is in the INTP personality. Let's see here.
I have found ENTPs to be INTPs to be a little disappointing, I guess, from like everything that people say. So I don't know.
I'm just saying that's where you're likely to find.
I liked one of them. No, I know. No, I'm not talking about the genius part, because that is, for certain. But I mean, like, I guess I was expecting more from INTPs in a way.
Well, it depends on which ones you talk to and how their life was and whether or not they're on medication. What can a ENTJ learn about an INFP? Well, an ENTJ can learn most things about an INFP. They can come talk to me about it, and they can learn a lot. Now, whether or not they're going to be interested seems unlikely. If they, let's say, knew somehow for sure that the person above them was an INFP and they needed to learn how to get them out of the way so that they can move forward, then they might have an interest in learning about that personality. But in most cases, ENTJs don't care about MBTI because it's not widely accredited enough, and even if it was, there are too many different sources of information to get, and so they don't know which one is the most correct. So instead, they'll go somewhere else for information on trying to learn about people. But ENTJs could learn a lot about INFPs, just whether or not they have an interest. Most of them just don't have that much of an interest in MBTI, understandably. I've had this Discord going for some months now, like 6 months, and I've talked to who I believed was an ENTJ, just one, over the course of months, talking to people, just one. And they got the information they wanted out of me, and then they left. I haven't talked to them since. So that's basically the behavior that I would expect out of an ENTJ. So
don't forget to like the video, guys.
And of course, like the video. I'm not sure what liking the video does for us, but it seems good. It seems like a positive thing. So
it helps with the algorithm.
It helps with the algorithm. See?
Mm-hmm.
Does it really?
Yeah, it does.
Are you sure, or is that just
No. The more interactions you have, well, I mean, I've been studying about it. The more interactions you have, the more YouTube will be recommending it.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, then absolutely like and comment. More questions, please, while I play World of Warships. I also like a lot of sandboxy games that involve ships. So Atlas, and that game's not great, full of bugs and problems, especially on a private server. but I liked the idea of it. I also enjoy the Imperion as well. That's a space ship game. Throwing you away once they don't have a use for you. Yeah, that's practically it. That's what an ENTJ does. If they have a use for you, they keep you around. As soon as they don't have a use for you, you're out. That's it. And that's not unreasonable. Like I don't think poorly of ENTJs because that's how they treat people. It's you've got this one life to live and you want to live it the way you want to live it. And if that involves using, getting what you need out of someone and then taking off to go do something else, then yeah, you know, the more comments, the better. I actually don't know. So we're just, I've only ever met one ENTJ woman. She was inspirational. Well, it's good to be inspired, I suppose, hopefully in the right way, if there is such a thing. Being inspired to help other people, for example. That generally puts more good into the universe than bad. Pizza with
Oh,
cotton candy sounds good. You're insane.
well, I also identify as an ENTJ, so
Oh, you identify? Is that how we're doing now? We're
yeah.
just come to my Discord and claim to be whatever type you want to be, and then everything will be fine.
Mm,
So,
exactly. That's what I do.
difference between a male ENTJ and a female ENTJ. Well, I thought there was an excellent example of a female ENTJ on an episode of House. Now, here's the thing: is that obviously men and women have different advantages and disadvantages in society, and so for a female ENTJ, they can get a lot out of society, especially when they don't care and they're excellent at lying. Whereas male ENTJs do have to worry more about physical confrontations with other people, being a little more aggressive, possibly. They're not as good at manipulating those environments. Men, on the other hand, are usually much easier to manipulate through certain means. So that's why an ENTJ female can get a little more done, I would imagine. But the difference, they're really, the only real difference is through their biology. That's the only real difference. They'll do whatever it takes to get what they want. So, and that goes for male or female ENTJs. Let's see. This game looks beautiful. Yeah, it's not so bad. Nothing's really going on here though. I'm gonna leave because there's no boats to shoot at really. Let's see. Trying to maintain any long-term friendship with an ENTJ is like entering a boss fight. It's a boss fight you're going to lose, most certainly, unless, of course, you have a lot of money. And if you have a lot of resources for them to abuse, then sure, you can have them for a while. But if not, then yes, it's not a fight you're going to win. ENTJs have tantrums when they don't get their way. When they go sideways, it's ugly. Yeah, that can theoretically be possible. It depends on whether or not a curveball gets thrown at them and it just completely screws their plans up. In which case, yeah, they may end up, doing something bad to you that might be illegal. It's absolutely possible. There was this movie, I can't remember what it was called, but it was about a teacher who had an ENTJ student come in, and the ENTJ was very concerned about getting a perfect score on this paper that they wrote because they, spent a lot of time on it. It was very important to them. And then he ends up going kind of nuts, kidnapping a baby, from the teacher. And I don't remember what it was called, but if you can find that movie based on the description, that's an excellent portrayal of an ENTJ male in school. And I thought it was pretty great. Let's see. Always practice it until it becomes perfect. However, perfect defines to the personal. Yeah. Is anything perfect? Let's see. This game is called World of Warships. And it's free to play. Because of course it is. Because I'm cheap. Let's see. Meryl Streep in Devil Wears Prada is an ENTJ. I've never seen it. And why does the devil wear Prada? If I may ask.
It's wait, you haven't? Okay, is this another movie that I have to add
No,
to
it's
Movie
not. All
Monday?
right, we're not. We don't need to do that. Any ENTJs on the Discord so far? There was the one, and I haven't spoken to them in like 5 months. So I'm gonna say no. There are no ENTJs on my Discord. I don't expect there to be either. Like, why would you be wasting your time talking to people about MBTI on a Discord? Many other, there's far more beneficial things that you could be doing with your time by a lot. It does feel like a daunting task trying to keep up with their level of growth and at least keeping your growth relative to theirs. It's your talk. I mean, when we're talking about ENTJs, we're literally talking about people who live and breathe, moving forward. That's their life, and so yeah, good luck keeping up with that. Is Team Rocket Jesse and ENTJ? No, no, no. I think possibly Giovanni, like the leader of Team Rocket. Yeah, he could very well be. It's possible. I'm trying to remember how he acted or behaved, but he was probably closer to an INTJ than an ENTJ. Let's see. We should watch it on Monday. Yeah, we could do that. I could also get wasted and pass out somewhere in a gutter. That could be fun too. Let's see. Which do you
We
tolerate
can
more?
do.
ENTJs or ESFPs? Well, thankfully, I don't often associate with either one, so it's not, it's ESFPs tend to talk about a lot of stuff that I do not care about. Obviously, they talk about real life stuff and the mundane, and talking about their friends and the things that they'd like to do for fun, which is usually like going to the Starbucks and complaining about how their coffee wasn't good enough. Kinds of clothes that they enjoy wearing, etc. That's what they like to do. That's what they like to talk about. So I'm not super interested. Obviously, ENTJs, they, I don't talk to them. So, and it's not because I don't want to talk to them. It's because, well, they're busy doing their own thing. So, which one would I prefer? If I could do something in the background, then at least at least with the ESFP, it's kind of like background noise, and I'm not really having to pay too much attention to it. So there's that. Whereas an ENTJ would just want to talk to me about what their accomplishments were and what they're doing. So yeah, wouldn't be all that interesting either. Let's see. Which do you think they are? If we're
Um,
talking about Jesse and James, I would need to rewatch Pokemon. So
I was gonna say for Meryl Streep being an ENTJ and like the Devil Wears Prada, I don't think in the book or in the movie there's enough information about her background to determine if she is an ENTJ or an ESTJ. So even if we did watch the movie, I don't think we could actually determine if that was the case. And when it comes to the question that Cookie Dough asked about, um, where is it? I lost it. What's the game called that you're playing?
World of Warships.
Did you say? Okay.
I've said it like 5 times now. World of
I
Warships.
know.
World of
I
Warships, free to play. It's a wargaming game. They have other games such as World of Tanks and World of Warplanes.
Perfect.
Thank you. I thought so too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, her other question was about Brett Cooper. That she says she's an ENTJ. Which Brett Cooper? The Daily Wire one?
Brett Cooper, I'm trying to. The only thing that comes to mind is there's a young woman with like dark eyes, dark hair that talks about political stuff, like things
Yeah,
happening in the
she's
news.
from Daily Wire. She's not an ENTJ.
No, she's not an ENTJ.
I would think she might be an ISTP. Who knows?
Yeah, that seems more likely, actually. Being
Yeah.
an STP. So, yeah, that. Yeah, she talks about the real and always wants to engage in that, which is fine. We need people like that in society. So, Doesn't bother me any. I enjoy it when people talk about politically incorrect things, because not enough people do it.
I do watch her videos. I actually like her. It's pretty interesting to see her perspective on things.
Well, good.
It's not bad.
What do we got next? She is into fashion, so I guess she could be an S. Well, you don't have to be an S to be into fashion necessarily, but if you're talking about it a lot, like it's a main focus of your life, then yes. There's more to life than fashion, generally speaking, so. Let's see. If we're born with all 8 functions and use all 8 functions, would it be nurture that forces us to favor certain functions over the others? Yeah, I would think so. So let's say you grow up in a bad part of, let's say, the country. So let's say you grow up in like central California, right, Modesto? And you're gonna have depending on how you grew up, you're gonna want to preference certain functions over others. For example, if you are in a very abusive household, then it's quite possible that you might have a greater understanding of extroverted feeling, assuming that you lived that long to get through being in an abusive household. Much like how I had to grow up. I grew up with someone who was very physically aggressive. We'll say that's absolutely the nicest way I can put it. And so you either learned to manipulate people to make them like you, or you got hurt a lot. So that's, you either adapt to it or you don't. And of course, the people that don't adapt to it, well, they typically don't last very long. Well, adapt to your environment. And I just so happen to have out of all of my family, there was like 7 people for most of my childhood in the same house. I was the only one to preference extroverted feeling at all. Everyone else was an introverted feeler, so I stuck out like a sore thumb. Let's see. Are ESFPs the stereotype? Out all the time and full of themselves, completely oblivious and with no thirst for the unknown, with absolute no thirst for obscure concepts. Yeah, many ESFPs do behave in that manner, for certain. I don't often talk to them. Understandably. Just not that interested. My parents were very kind SE, FE type, so extroverted sensing and extroverted feeling. So that would mean that, wait, were they had both, or they were one or the other? I think it helped me develop my introverted sensing better than most ENTP. Well, to develop it would be to, I guess, would be having more of a preference for going with what's already been done versus things that have not been done. And I personally, I still don't prefer to do things how they've always been done. I'm still trying out new things, still preferring to live my life the way that I want to, um, because doing it the same way that everyone else is doing it is awful and boring. And that's probably what got me in trouble for most of my life, was to simply not do what everyone else was doing. So um, there is no ENTP that's going to just all of a sudden decide that living through the lens of introverted sensing is being a better option. Not even as a matter of making a decision on it. It's that their brain, that's how their brain is formed. And so extroverted intuition's in the lead, meaning that you're always thinking about the new ways to do things, the new possibilities, perspectives, etc., versus ever doing them the way that they've always been done. you'll have a distaste for it. Let's see. I think growing up with abusive people that probably prefer introverted feeling will cause the child to prefer extroverted feeling. It's all about mom or dad wants, needs, values, and feelings, and the child has to keep the harmony. Well, I didn't really. I would sometimes try to keep the harmony, but realistically, we lived in more or less a dictatorship in the house, and it's either do what you were told or get hit. So, and I got hit a lot, as you can imagine. So, you know, it was the one thing that I couldn't just turn off. I could not turn off all the ideas and the daydreaming about wondering about other things and how the homework was really boring, and I couldn't focus well enough on it. Couldn't change it about myself. It's not something that could be changed. And so, I have also met a lot of, in quote, ENTPs that were INTPs as well. And that's, there isn't as much of a difference there, but there is a stronger preference for introverted sensing than extroverted feeling. So there is that. I need to see if the mods for this game are good to go. Let's see. Which out of the 16 would be the top 3 most interested, and on the other end of the spectrum, the bottom 3, and why? We're talking about the most interested in MBTI. I would think
Yes.
Most interested, like really like do what I did and spend their time learning about it, for 10 years. I would say that probably the top 2 would most likely be INFPs, and ENFPs would be the most interested, maybe ENTPs because they have more of a bent towards people. So that makes sense. A lot of INTPs wouldn't really care, that they're just not as interested in people, therefore they don't care as much about it. So there's that. As for the bottom 3, that could be, there's introverted sensors typically don't care about MBTI. A lot of introverted intuitives don't care about MBTI. A lot of extroverted sensors don't care about MBTI. So I couldn't. I like ISTJs probably care the least, I would imagine. I'd probably go with that. Let's see. I wonder if some abused children prefer extroverted intuition as a way to dissociate from reality and imagine a better life or something. I think it's probably the extroverted intuition that causes them to get abused in the first place. It's probably.
That makes sense to me.
It's.
My mom had a very hard time trying to even understand why I didn't like the same thing she liked, or why I couldn't be present, or how I didn't notice things.
Yeah, it's extroverted intuition is probably more often the cause for the abuse. And I never really get a chance to say this in context. I'm not victim blaming here. I'm just saying that there is a reason why things happen, and that if you're wanting to do things your way all the time, or come up with new ways to do stuff instead of getting things done, there's a lot of people in this world that don't appreciate that. They just want you to do what you're told. And I am not someone that does that very well. Let's see. In a safe and stable home, you can be different, and it's okay, and then encouraged. I do have a distaste for sameness, and always they are the same, which makes it easier. There is something cozy about introverted sensing. Oh, most certainly. I'm sure that there is something cozy about coming back to something that's familiar all the time. Most certainly. But ENTPs don't have a strong preference for it. As a matter of fact, they have a distaste for it. They have a disdain. They don't want to keep doing that kind of a thing. INTPs, though, don't typically have much of an issue with it. They do appreciate consistency, most certainly. And when it comes to whether or not someone might change from, like, let's say, one type to another, most of the time that's nonsense. You can't just change who you are unless you suffer brain damage. But when it comes to that nature versus nurture thing, I do believe that there is a chance to change your first letter from I to an E depending on how you grew up. I think there is a possibility there. So if you just don't grow up around people or you're constantly abused by people, then you may decide that people aren't worth your time. So you understand how to act around them, but you don't really want to engage with them a whole lot, giving, so if you were to switch from like ENTP to an INTP, well, it's because you grew up in a certain environment that didn't foster that kind of behavior. Therefore, you ended up ignoring extroverted feeling and, moving on with just memory, introverted sensing. I think that's possible. Well, I don't know. I don't know what you believe in terms of. I don't know what you believe being smart enough is for an INTP. Um, but that's fine to think that. Everyone has their own thoughts, most certainly. Fascinating and intriguing. Thank you, Radiant Goose. I had an abusive upbringing too, and my reaction would be to stay quiet or hide, and my extroverted intuition would help me with mentally escaping the situation. Well, that's good. That's great. It did not help me. It just helped me try to ignore what was going on at that exact moment. which there was a bright side. I was removed from that house at 15, but the bright side being that I handle pain a little bit better than the average person. I imagine I can ignore a great number of pains in my body.
Yeah, I'm a baby when it comes to pain.
Well, let's see here. Not let it hold you back. You're so school or ordinated, and the chores go to the back of your mind. Just ensure that you have clean something, whatever you need to get by at barest minimum. Yep, that's probably good advice. But of course, if you have a strong preference for extroverted intuition, it's gonna go by the wayside.
I think Radiant Goose says ESTPs are considered from several sources to have a low IQ. I think you mean ESFPs.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I would not suspect that the lowest IQ people would be someone with a preference for introverted thinking. However, that would require far more testing, in my opinion. The ability to solve novel problems. Intelligence. That's how I define intelligence. That kind of a thing.
What do you mean by novel problems?
Problems that haven't been that haven't happened before. Things that are unique to the situation. Novel. So you have a very specific problem, and then it's your ability to solve the problem. And it has to be different, and it has to be novel. Like if it's a problem that it comes around all the time, well, you can just write a book on it, and then everyone can learn it. And obviously, that's not a measure of someone's intelligence.
So at this point, for Urchin, anybody with TI is going to be in the top of the 16, correct?
I don't think so.
No.
There's more to the theory. There's like how often does, let's say, an extroverted someone who's normally a preferenced extroverted thinker, well, how often do they preference their introverted thinking? I mean, because everyone uses it every day, just to what degree? And so I do think that there is when it comes to those shadow functions, I think their development has more to do with your particular life circumstances than anything else. What is going on with my phone? Stop it.
I was about to ask, what is going on?
I don't know. It's probably the connection. It's bad. Anyway, what was the next one? It's also the ability to understand things fast. I remember reading somewhere that also the reaction time, speed with which we come up with those answers would also be part of the measure for the intelligence. So I've read that as well. Not 100% sure. Seems plausible though, don't it? So there's that. That's why, the IQ tests are about pattern recognition. That's what they're about. Just being able to recognize a pattern to see it and then be able to come up with a solution for it. Important stuff. It's important for most aspects of life. Which is the most common verified type you have certified so far and the rarest? Van, you have to help me with that because my memory isn't great.
Well, the thing is, it's such a small part, of the community or the world that I don't know if the people that we have typed could come in as a.
Yeah.
Because we have already typed 3 INFJs. So, based on that, then the rarest would be an ESFJ because we have typed none.
Yeah, it's like we've in terms of like this Discord doing like an official typing, certified and that kind of a thing, then I would say there's a number of introverted sensors that I haven't typed at all. So which is the most common though since starting this Discord thing. In terms of real life typing, yeah, most people are sensors, as you can imagine, whether introverted or extroverted. That makes perfect sense. Let's see. Which type are or would be most likely to blindly follow or fall into an ideology, religion, cult, etc. Which ones are the most likely? Well, introverted sensors. They are the most likely. It doesn't mean that they're the only ones that do that. It's just that they are most likely. Introverted sensors grow up with their, whatever their programming was, and that's not just their parents. That's their brothers, their sisters, any other extended family, including where they go to school at, what the kids at school are doing, their teachers. That's all taken into account for introverted sensors and their programming. So my mom is an ESFJ. Well, that was probably not so bad then. What types are your parents? I had an INTJ and an ENFP parents. My father was an ENFP and my mother still an INTJ. And she behaves very INTJ. And she has her entire life. And yes, they of course got divorced when I was like 4 or something. So understandably, those are two types that do not work well together with ENFP male and an INTJ female. That's a no. Do not do that. That is bad, bad, bad.
That's what I've been telling Sleepy, but he wants to find himself an INTJ female. I'm like, I don't think you're gonna like that.
Yeah. Well, it's not even that he's not gonna like that. She's not gonna like it. So.
Yeah, I mean that's what I said too.
Yes, my father is more or less against physical violence, only in very rare circumstances in which physical violence should be taken or as a measure. My mother, on the other hand, had no issues being physical with me. ESFJs can be really bad too, in my experience. Well, yeah, everyone can be really bad for a lot of reasons. ESFJs can be bad because if you're not falling in line with whatever the social norms are, well, that causes them grief. Let's see. INTJ, aren't ENTP and INTJ meant to be the golden pair? Golden pair in hell, I guess. Yeah, totally. But
I
no,
can't imagine you dating
you're
an INTJ.
you're going to have a lot of disagreements, tons of disagreements about how things should be done. Um, just it's not good. And yeah, and as for the golden pair thing, that's ridiculous. More often than not, that's a very silly. It's a very silly concept. Everyone has their own unique life experiences. They're going to have their own interests, their own tastes and things. And so just plucking two random personalities of a specific type and throwing them together and then assuming it's going to work, that's ridiculous. Are ENTPs and ESFJs a better match on Earth? A better match? They're closer in line with cognitive functions, but it really comes down to what their interests are. That's what makes a good relationship. It's making sure that you and whoever you're with enjoy, you know, similar things, and then building memories on those common interests. And that's what makes a good relationship. So you could theoretically have a good relationship with anyone so long as you enjoy doing the same, the things you both enjoy doing together, you know. Um, but I've known a number of ESFJs in my life, and I get along with them perfectly well. But is it someone that you're going to want to have badgering you about you not being a part of the societal norms every day? No, probably not. Probably.
You get along with everything.
Are Enneagrams and tri-types not worth a sheet too, as well, you mean? I have a Enneagram. I've read some of it, and it was my opinion that for Enneagram, things can change depending on how your current life circumstances are. And so I immediately wrote it off as something whether or not it was worth my time. The answer was probably not. I don't know about tri-types. I don't know what that is. I specialize in MBTI. MBTI, I use it. I use it every day. It has gotten me, there's been some benefits for it. I don't have a need for any other, like when it comes to the categorization of other behaviors that people exhibit, I don't have a need for that. So just not as interested. Yeah, let's see. Would you say someone you would get along with the least would be someone who has your dominant function as their fourth? Um, no, no. I mean, I don't. I'm generally good at just behaving in whatever way I need to behave so that someone can like me. So it doesn't really bother me with whatever functions they have. It just depends on what we're talking about. So, for example, yes, a lot of ESFPs, as I mentioned before, like to talk about some very benign, uninteresting topics, things I just don't have an interest in. So that can be taxing at times. But for the most part, like let's say I'm talking to an ISFJ. I've never had a bad conversation with an ISFJ. Where they usually talk about people, which is fine. I can talk about people. I don't mind talking about people. They're usually looking for a solution as well. So. Well, have a good night. Lines for a name with a heart.
Good night, cookie dough.
It's cookie dough. That's, I forgot. ENTJ are the worst because they're not even remotely funny. I don't know if they're really remotely funny. In their cognitive function preferences, I would assume that they're not, big jokesters or anything. They're just more concerned about efficiency. So possibly. Are all ENTPs or any type for that matter the same, akin to speaking to yourself in a mirror? When it comes to coming to certain conclusions about things, typically yes. Certain personality types. However, that can change. So that makes sense for, let's say, an ENTP. Two people that have thought about this very specific topic over and over again. Well, they're eventually most likely going to come to the same conclusion. But if we're talking about, let's say, ISTJs, that can be wildly different. Introverted sensors can have completely different opinions or understandings of things based on how they grew up and where they grew up. So there's that. Let's see. Like long term, you wouldn't get along. Long term, I I would hope that I would get along with, most people more often than not. But yeah, the long term, I'm not going to get along with introverted sensors as much, most certainly. I not in the long term. Like you meet him at work, you have conversation, let's say 2 hours a day at work. Yeah, I'll probably get along just fine. But living with them, that's a whole nother set of circumstances. So
I like my ISFJ best friend. It took a while for us to kind of get in a synergy, but it was not bad.
there you go. Just takes time.
It does. You have to be patient.
How would you type Frankenfurter from Rocky Horror? I haven't watched Rocky Horror Picture Show since I was like 7 or 8, so I couldn't tell you. But I'm sure I would type them accurately. I'm sure of it. Let's see. I usually agree with Cal on virtually everything that we talk about. As an example of types agreeing, I don't really have any disagreements with him.
Yeah, you and Cal are freakish sometimes when you guys are together. I've said this before. Like you guys do. He says it more, like it's more elaborate with anything he says, but typically you guys are very coordinated with your thoughts. Like I agree with most of the things that you guys say.
Let's see, I'm guessing ESFJ for Frankenfurter. Maybe. I have no idea. Wouldn't know. Lots of ENTJ jello tonight. Which type is history has had the most U.S. presidents? What? Which type in history has had the most U.S. presidents? I would need to actually do some research on the U.S. presidents, unfortunately. I do not have an encyclopedic knowledge of U.S. presidents, turns out. I don't suspect that assuming that the United States had an ENTP president, I would assume it wouldn't be in recent history. Imagine a president that wants to go against the status quo and radically change things, like shake things up. It's like that's not something that happens often, obviously. I got one. Let's see. What's another question? Talking about ENTJs, though, we were supposed to be talking about ENTJs. They're just very efficient people. Period. The efficiency is extremely important to them and making sure that their goals and plans are succeeding, which means that they don't have a lot of time for you as a person. I always thought it was weird that the internet, of course, would tell you that, the ideal match for an ENTJ would be an INFP. Like, no, obviously not. Imagine you're a person that's all about their feelings and caring about the morals and values and the ethics of situations, and your partner couldn't care less about it, and you would undoubtedly always have disagreements about courses of action, because in one instance a course of action is going to cause harm potentially to other people, and the ENTJ is going to be like, well, I don't really care if it causes harm to other people, whereas the INFP is going to be all about making sure that no one's harmed in that particular course of action. It's like, well, how's that going to work out long term? It's not. Jeez, 6 overpens. Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson was an ENTJ. Thought on Bill Clinton and Trump being ESTPs. I don't get the impression that Donald Trump was an ESTP at all. I did not get that impression. Donald Trump would be a more classic ESTJ, you know, fat cat. Um, Bill Clinton was most likely a ENFP, based on what I can remember from my childhood. But he may not have been. I'd have to go back and look at what he did. You are assuming that they talk. Who? Bill Clinton and Trump? Yeah, I've heard them speak before. Matter of fact, I've watched them speak before on the internet. Let's see. What else do we got here? Oh, what was I talking about? Yeah, ENTJs and INFPs. That's just not good. I wouldn't recommend it. Momentarily stopping by while at work. Well, hi, Joseph.
I'll take this time to say, don't forget to join the Discord, like and subscribe, and if you guys would like to be typed by Mr. Urchin, please submit an application. You can always just DM me if you want to know how to do it.
Yes, always DM then. Always about that stuff. I'm really not paying attention to this. Let's see. If the ENTJ provided the home and INFP fell in romantic love with the life provided, it would work. For how long? Like, we need to take into account, certain, chemicals that are introduced to the brain during the beginning of, a relationship. Eventually it's going to decay. And now you'll have an INFP that's always being told what to do and how they should behave because the ENTJ told them to. How long you think that's going to work out? Like at the height of their love for the ENTJ? Sure. I'd imagine that they could do that for a little while. Well, how many months is that going to last? It's like, well, eventually the INFP is going to get sick of it.
I don't know about the INFP, but I would say I would go to an ENTJ daddy and
being told what to do. No, that's the difference between fantasy and reality. Like there were so many women that were like, "Oh, I want my own." What was his name? Like Christian Grey.
Yeah, Christian Grey.
So like, "Oh, I need to find my Christian Grey." And I'm like, "That's fantasy. The reality is so much worse than what was in that book." There's a lot going on here that a lot of people don't consider. They have a harder time imagining, or how real life is actually going to be with an ENTJ. The answer is you're not going to have fun. For one, the ENTJ is going to be busy a lot, so you're not going to see him a whole lot. And then when they get home, let's say they're gone for like a week, 2 weeks on business trips. When they get home, they expect you to have done everything that they told you to do, and they expect you to perform the services that they want you to perform while they're there. Period. And so there's lots of times in which you won't even have them in your life. They're going to be gone doing their own thing.
So you're telling me you don't think I can make it with an ENTJ? Is that?
I think you're going to get real sick of it real quick.
Well, I'll keep living my fantasy until it happens.
Yeah, bury your nose in a fantasy book, a smut novel, whatever. Go ahead and do that, because the reality is so much worse than how it's portrayed in the book. And yes, an INFP would raise kids, and they would have to, of course, do it alone, because the ENTJ is not going to be there doing that. And it's like, yeah, sure, maybe an INFP would just love to, have all the financial stability, but of course their life is completely bogged down by whatever the ENTJ tells them to do. And somehow they would enjoy that, which that doesn't seem likely, especially if they're not getting that emotional support that they need from their partner, which they would not be getting from the ENTJ. But it's, which of course the INFP is absolutely going to end up cheating on the ENTJ. It's just a matter of time. Like literally you haven't seen your partner in, let's say, 2-3 weeks on the regular. Like, no, you're eventually going to get sick of that. That's just real life. A lot of people want to live in their fantasy, which is fine. I don't, you got this one life to live, and, live it how you want. But the reality is that people do not enjoy that. Most ENTJs, especially nowadays, are not even going to consider things like marriage unless it's going to help them politically to be married. Outside of that, like, no, marriage is just a contract that you're going to have to sign that might screw you over in the end. They're very practical people, and marriage is simply not, nowadays, marriage is not a practical thing to do at all. So, point is, it doesn't work. And yeah, as for ENTJs and like the feelings of love, even if they did feel a genuine love for their children, they're not really going to express it in a way that would be considered traditional. Let's see. Happy birthday, Radiant Goose. Thank you, Ven, for the $4.99. Let's see. As for some people, that is exactly what they want. Lack of interference. Yes. Introverted intuitives prefer a lack of interference in their life. They do not enjoy interference. And that goes for all of them. Whether it's ENTJs, INTJs, ENFJs, or INFJs. They do not want interference. They have a great distaste for it. Their plans need to be working. And don't get in their way. Won't like the results. Oh, that's fine to disagree.
I do disagree with the statement that Ben loves talking with ESFPs, but okay.
Wait, you love talking with ESFPs?
Yeah, Joseph said Ben is ENFP, loves talking with ESFPs.
Oh, well, great, Ben. I'm glad to hear that.
Have you seen me talk to ESFPs?
Not really. Usually you don't say anything, and you send me a message, and you're like, hey, can we like stop talking and do something else? Or
I think it lasts like 10-15 minutes before I just leave the chat.
Yeah, it just takes off. I don't falter for it, but you're my assistant. Need to do assistant things.
I need to do better.
How's ENTJ intuition used in contrast to ENTP? Well, they're completely different forms of the intuition, which is described by the Myers-Briggs type indicator. We're not talking about colloquial intuition. That's more to do with introverted feeling than it does the introverted or extroverted intuition. Let's see here. How does it contrast? Well, the introverted intuition, their goals, their plans, their ideas for themselves, whereas a ENTP has a preference for extroverted intuition, which is ideas about literally anything other than themselves. So that's their preference. Things that usually have no real significant practical value, perspectives of other people, just thinking about it just to think about it. And they waste a great deal of time doing that. A lot. So there's that. So it's completely different. ENTJs are far more practical with their plans and goals for life, obviously. And that's just the MBTI math, as I call it. Lead extroverted thinking means that your whole life is about doing what other people consider to be logically correct and believing it. So now that sounds bad, on its face, but in reality, you can get a lot of stuff done by just believing what someone tells you is true. Because depending on where you go, more often than not, it'll probably just be correct. If I pop open a math textbook, I expect every answer in there to be correct. I would expect it. I would, of course, also double check to make sure that it was in fact correct. But I would expect that virtually all of it's going to be correct, barring some typos here and there. But that's just, if you just believe what's in the book, you can absorb it and then move on. So it's really more of a matter of accreditation to make sure that whatever it is that you're reading is actually correct. What was I talking about? What was the next ENTJ related question?
I don't see another ENTJ related question yet, but again, everybody.
Well, that's how these streams go anyway. It's It's we talk about a subject for like a good 30 minutes
Mm-hmm.
and then we move on to literally anything else. Anybody know of any great games I should play? Yeah, I know of a lot of great games that you should play.
We know about what those are already.
Yeah, most people already know them. I know a great number of games. A lot of them are old. Well, not too many. Baldur's Gate 3 wasn't as fun as I was hoping it was going to be because to make the game easier to play, you needed to actually take NPCs with you. And I am against taking NPCs with me in games. I avoid them when I can. And it's not that I don't like the characters, it's that I would have to play them. That's my problem. I don't want to play these other characters. I want to play my character, the one that I made. And so, like, if there was an AI for them and they would just play themselves while they were in my party, then I'd totally do that. But that's not normally the case. So, you could play Scrabble. I did play Scrabble for a solid like month once. Recent, not like earlier this year, like for about a solid month. Played Scrabble. Um, Obviously, it got pretty boring pretty quick, but yeah, what doesn't these days? What's an ideal match for an ENTJ? Anyone that is willing to do what they're told. So there's a lot of ISFPs that are usually fairly malleable in those regards. ISFJs, as long as the ENTJ is making a ton of money and giving them the lifestyle that they expected, then there you got that. Same goes with an ESFJ. Do those, and then you're good.
A delusional ENFP right here. Also,
For some, Ven believes that she's just going to be this obedient housewife that's going to do everything that's told to her all the time. I'm like, no, you're not.
you have zero faith in me, but okay.
I have zero faith in your ability to manage an ENTJ in a relationship. I want to play something that allows for exploration and challenging quests. Well, I recommend, assuming you have a PC, and you should, everyone should have a computer. There is an older game called Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. And a sequel is supposed to be coming out at some point in the future. I've been waiting for it for like the past 3 years. But you get to play a vampire. You get to make your own. You can't. It's not very detailed on the character customization, like how they appear. But you get to pick your stats, skills, how you want to play the game. Pick up different weapons, armors, passive items that boost your character, and you get to explore what it means to be a vampire in more modern day times, which includes, making sure you don't eat people out in the middle of the street. Otherwise, someone catches you on a cell phone, and then that. So basically a pushover, yeah, you're more or less a pushover personality or someone that's willing to fall in line with the ENTJ's plans. That's perfect. INFPs obviously are going to be a little more headstrong, same with ENFPs, most other personalities. A lot of ENTJs end up not getting into relationships. The ones that I have heard about that, there was a lot of evidence for them being an ENTJ based on what I was told, most of them are divorced. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Understandably so. But those were, of course, much older ENTJs. Those were ENTJs that are now like, in their 60s, for example. And, that's just how it was back then. But nowadays, ENTJs are not going to spend a lot of time on the whole marriage front. And that's just a liability. And now you can have sexual relations with anyone you want without needing a marriage license. So what's the real point in getting married unless you need it for political gains? When I was 5, I thought I was a vampire and I was worried I was going to have no choice but murder my family and drink their blood. Worse things have happened. I'm sure of it. Let's see.
Yeah, when I was 5, I told my mom that I wanted to be a vampire or that I wanted to be in the CIA, so she needed to disappear and leave me in the streets so I could be adopted by the CIA.
Wow.
Or become a vampire. Yeah, I told her she needed to disappear because I did not want to have a family.
Got it. Well, that makes sense. Let's see. Ape Escape 3. No, I have not played Ape Escape 3. I would recommend you go check out Vampire the Masquerade, assuming you have a machine. If you don't have a machine, well, that's your fault. You should have a computer by now. Everyone should have a computer.
You get so offended when someone doesn't have a computer.
I'm not offended. I'm at worst, I'm frustrated that people don't have a computer. I had to try and run a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, and everyone was using their cell phones to try and do Dungeons and Dragons. Jesus, that was painful. Yeah, you're some kind of console peasant, and that's fine. Am I going to get married? I sincerely doubt that I'll ever get married in my life. Marriage is just not something that seems to fit me very well.
Come on, I'm sure you can make it work.
I'm sure I could make it work, but it would cause me too much pain to make it work. And so pain, effort, rewards, there's a balance there that you have to find, and I just don't see it there at the moment. So
no worry, guys, we'll find her a good little housewife.
Good little housewife.
Yeah, I don't propose myself because I can't be that, but I'm pretty sure we can find one.
Well, good luck. That's all I can really say about it. I'm broke. I'll tell my boyfriend to download that vampire game on his computer and play it. And there you go. That's the spirit. Why do it yourself when you can have other people do it for you? Vampire the Masquerade. I think it's cheap. I think it's like $20 or something on Steam. Give it a shot. See how it goes.
Yeah, so let me watch you play, because I actually have been wanting to play that game for like a year or two now, because I saw it on Steam, and it looked pretty cool, so...
It is pretty cool.
I want to watch you play.
It's something that can be done. Man, I need to... Someone remind me to get those mods after this game. It's almost over. Assuming they're even available. They made Arcanum. Fun fact. Messy flight attendant. My best relationship was with a guy who traveled for work every month. He'd leave for a week or two, and we never really checked in with each other. I'd get kind of sad when he'd come back. Yeah, I know that feeling. Do you watch Adventure Time? I have seen Adventure Time, and there were some episodes that were funny. I liked the one where they were created by some kind of Reaper skeleton character and tried to offer them magic. And I like the beginning where the dog was saying to the kid, was his name like Finn? I think it was Finn. I think the dog's name was Jake. I could be wrong. Anyways, the dog says to the kid, "What do you notice about this guy?" And so, of course, it pans over to the skeleton. He looks kind of evil looking, whatever. And so the kid says, "Well, he's evil." And the dog's like, "Yeah, he's evil. Sure, whatever. But really, he's ugly. Therefore, he's desperate. Push him for more." I thought that was hilarious. Or a musician who tours a lot would be good wife material. Wait. A woman who's a musician and is on tour a lot, that would be good wife material?
They're saying for you, but I don't think so.
Like, why would that be?
It's like because of how you said it.
That's one of the most wrong things I've heard all day. Maybe.
Well, no, it's because you agreed with Bob's analysis of like they wanted someone who traveled a lot, so they're giving you good housewife materials.
No. Like as a man, typically a man wants a companion, a sidekick, someone who helps them with their things. That's what most men are looking for. To have a woman that was on the road as a musician all the time, I mean, for one, assuming that she stayed faithful to you, you wouldn't really have much in the ways of a relationship. In which case, why would you wife that up in the first place? Secondly, you would be assuming that she would constantly be putting herself in positions to be hit on by other men. In which case, why would I want that as a wife? Like, the answer would, of course, be you wouldn't want that.
No, I already have the woman that I'm looking for him. It has to be someone, she doesn't wake him up, right? When he gets on his computer, she maybe brings him his coffee, his juice, whatever he wants, his little breakfast. He says, "Oh, thank you," and then she comes and cleans his plates, and then he goes back to whatever she's doing while he's playing his video games, and then comes back again.
What I would want is a companion. I would want someone that is interested in the same things that I'm interested in. And then, like, maybe we could do like rock, paper, scissors as to who's going to be responsible that particular afternoon. Maybe do that. I'd always win, of course.
How are you gonna always win?
Because I'm in your mind, so I'll always know what you're gonna pick.
That's not. No, I highly doubt that.
Let's see. That was hilarious. I agree. I recommend you check out the spinoff, Fiona and Cake. I might check it out. I'll watch some YouTube videos. Maybe that'll... let's see. I'm kind of thirsty. Better get some NyQuil. Tasty. It's the Green Death flavor. You want a little buddy, Batman? I just want someone who can make up for my problems, I guess. I would like someone to balance me out, I suppose. That's more or less. And unfortunately, for that person, what I need in terms of balance is stability and more responsibility. So... And then, of course, they'd also have to enjoy the same things that I enjoy. Well, not everything, just enough things for us to have a, connection. So, but yes, stereotypically, men they don't need a woman to come into their life to lead them around to do things. They need, they want the woman to be more subservient, docile, more agreeable, for example, etc. And so I'm of course not so unique and special that those are not desirable qualities in a partner.
This is why I can't find a man. I have none of those things.
The most desirable, and I've talked about this in videos before, but the most desirable personality types in women are ESFJs, ISFJs, and ISFPs. Those are, in terms of personality, those are by far the most desirable. And the problem is that they are the most common. And so if you're not one of those three types, you may have a much more difficult time, finding that man of your dreams kind of thing, especially early on. I watched your live video about how thinker women still want traditional masculine partners, and that's very true for myself. I used to joke around that I'm masculine, but I want a man more masculine than me. Yeah, and I made a video on that too. When it came to MBTI and relationships, realistically speaking, men and women are different, and they typically want different things. So women still want intelligent, strong, generally tall, successful men. That's what they're naturally attracted to, and that includes INTJ women. I assume ENTJ women don't really care, but INTJs, INFJs, all these more independent, free-thinking types of women, they still want those kinds of men. Well, unfortunately, there's not that many men that do that, and so they're all gunning for the same kinds of guys. And then when it comes to women, regardless of their type, even an INFP male still wants a woman that he can lead, that she can look up to him, and be responsible and to help her and to keep her alive and to help her survive in this world. Well, that means that you're going to have a woman that's even more timid than the INFP male. Well, where are you going to find that? Well, ISFP women. But ISFP women generally enjoy a much more masculine man, which that behaves in a more in a less emotional state. They prefer less emotional men. Than they want a rock and anchor to have in their life, and INFP males have a more difficult time doing that. So it doesn't always work out. Matter of fact, most of the time it doesn't work out. I do want my man to do the housework though, because I ain't gonna do it. Well, see, what you're looking for is a man that has so much money that he can afford that, nanny maid character that you're 90% sure he's not gonna have sex with.
No, no, no. I had this masculine man that I used to date, and he would even cook for me because I did not like cooking. Although granted, I did take care of him in other ways, very, very well. But we would divide like sometimes the housework. Like we would clean the house and would just do it because that way it's faster if you do it both of us. If he would, obviously he cooked, so I washed the dishes. So things like that. Like it was always divided.
It was always divided.
Yeah, like
division of labor helps.
The load.
Most certainly. So it's how do you type people in real life? I listen to them. Usually. Just like I do with typing on the Discord. It's actually easier to do it in candid situations, so no one's trying to, fake being something else, or at least not in the ways that MBTI is concerned. They don't try to give you answers that, because they're wanting you to believe they're an introverted thinker, for example. Hire an ugly maid. Yeah, you could do that too. But yeah.
Why does she need to be ugly? Are you not confident enough?
Well, it's not even a matter of confidence. Men will have sex with anything.
That's true.
Fat, skinny, pretty, ugly. It doesn't really matter. Just the idea of, having relations with someone that's different is usually enough to get them interested. So,
well, that's how you prove the loyalty then.
Just, although generally speaking, if you go with an old maid, an older woman, then the men are far less likely to do that. So you can go that route. Like don't hire the, fresh into college 19-year-old to do your maid work. What was that joke? And I don't know if any of you youngins ever watched Scary Movie 2, but as the main character was reading like the diary of the disgruntled wife, she was saying that I'm starting to suspect that my husband is sleeping with the babysitter. That must be why he keeps her around, because we have no children. Yep, it seemed logical to me. I need to rewatch that movie. That's some real
I was
gems.
about to say, because you've mentioned it.
I did mention
it
it
It's the
before.
second time, yeah, so we're going to have to watch that movie.
Men want to be providers. They benefit on every level for being needed. Well, except for the financial part, yes, they benefit. Typically, men enjoy having responsibility, but also the authority that comes with that responsibility. If you have all the responsibility, you should have all the authority. And if you have no responsibility, then you should have no authority. So, there's that. No. Anyhow, what else are we talking about? Now it somehow changed into a conversation about men and women and relationships, which makes sense. That was like 90% of the questions I would get about MBTI.
Yeah, I'm telling you, those are what people want to talk about.
So, yeah, people come to MBTI hoping for easy answers, like, oh, I just need to look for this personality type and everything will be okay. That's not how it's going to go down. Is it common for strong introverted feeling users to kind of overstep others' boundaries without taking care of people they care about? With taking care of the
Yes.
people they, yeah, that can happen. Most certainly, it can happen with most people. But is it common? It depends on your relationship with them. If that introverted feeler has known you for a very long time, then yes, I can see where that would happen much more often than not. It's that's a total possibility. It's that desire to procreate, brother. Yes, the desire to procreate. That is seemingly what we do very easily as a species.
Yeah, I would say it is common. Sometimes I overstep because on accident, and then when I realize I'm like, oh, probably shouldn't have done that. I need to back off for a bit.
There you go. Easy peasy. And most of the time, it's men asking me about relationship stuff, believe it or not. Because women obviously don't have a difficult time just finding a relationship. They can pick up a man whenever they want. It's just that quality of the man might be a little less than what they would normally desire. But the point remains the same. They can just get relationships whenever they want, so they're not usually out looking for relationship advice. But it's the young men, typically. Typically, it's been INFPs. I know that sounds stereotypical, but yes, it's mostly INFP men that ask me about relationship advice regarding MBTI, and I have to disappoint them and say, look, that's just not how it works. What I do tell I tell INFPs specifically, if you want to, have more success in that arena, then I suggest that you emulate a character in your life, or maybe one that you've seen on TV or in a movie, and try to behave in ways that they behave and see if it works out for you. I'm more reactive. Someone's upset. What? No, what do I have to do to get in their good graces? Yeah, that's what I do. More of an unconscious thought these days, but yes. Because obviously, on a more realistic level, I obviously don't care about what someone's feeling. I just want to know what they're feeling so that I can try to, maybe fix it for them if it's possible, or be able to manipulate it to my advantage. Introverted feeling is so sloppy. I don't know what you mean by sloppy, but some people could consider it sloppy.
Yes, I was wondering that too. Like, why are we sloppy?
Maybe she means unarticulated, perhaps. More not as articulate in its explanations and expressions, perhaps. I'm not sure. Young INFP men need to date older women. Young INFP men need to emulate the behaviors of men that get more female attention. That's what they need to do. They don't do it, but, I always offer that advice. I tried to get Druid to do it. I don't know how many months ago it was, and I asked him how it's been going. He's like, "Well, I don't think it's me." And I'm like, I'm aware that it's not you. I know that it's not you. That's the point. 30-year-old woman and 20-year-old INFP male have the same needs. Do they?
I don't know about that.
I don't.
A 30-year-old woman wants more stability already in their life, right? That's what they're looking for.
Yeah, that's what they missed out on. Finding a more stable man to be with. So,
like, if I'm looking for a man, I need a man that is, I know can protect me, right? Like, that's what I'm looking for, like a masculine man that I know would have no problems with that. And they can listen to me rant about things from time to time. Not always, just time to time. I'm 29 years old, and I would not date a 20-year-old INFP male. There's a lot of maturity that needs to happen for that relationship to work, in my opinion. And a 20-year-old male is looking for things that they haven't, exploring. They're still discovering things. It's their fun years.
It's the fun years, assuming that they are in fact having fun. I imagine not everyone
Yeah.
is. Let's see. So what are the best qualities of ENTJs, male and female? Well, maximum efficiency is usually their best quality. They're good at being efficient. They want the results. They need results, and so that's what they go for, which is understandable. They get stuff done. That's also part of their whole appeal, is that they get things done. They get it done in a timely fashion, or at least they try to. Don't know if it always works out for them, and I'm sure they get relatively perturbed if it doesn't. What are the best qualities though, whether male or female? But their best qualities are, unfortunately, qualities that are for them specifically. They take good care of their bodies. They look fit. They have no issues when it comes to lying or stretching the truth to get what they want. Those kinds of things. So they're really good at whatever it is that they choose to do. Typically, they'll get the best information wherever it can be found. And they will try and get it done as fast as possible. So there's that. They're just better than us. Those are the best qualities of ENTJs. They're just better than us. Do more introverted feelers users respect when you set a boundary with them? That completely depends on the nature of your relationship. If they respect you, then most certainly they'll respect the boundaries. If they don't respect you, then they could care less about your boundaries. Or do they ignore it because it's not what they want? Yeah, people get this impression that preferenced introverted feelers just always do what they want all the time. That's not how society works. People weigh the pros and cons of whether or not it's a good idea to ignore what someone says or to, do with what they want. What are some famous ENTJs? Former director of the FBI, James Comey. I believe he was an ENTJ. I watched him for a while. And then, of course, when you hear about the things that were going on in the U.S. government around that time, that was probably about right. The ENTJs usually do a good job of blending in because they have to. Because when you go around telling people that when you go around telling people that you don't care about ethics or codes of conduct or whatever, I just care about me and getting the things that I want and making sure that I do get them, people tend to wander away from you. Was one of the nicest ways to put it. So they can pretend fairly well. I mean, they'll slip up, to let you know that they are in fact an ENTJ. But if you're not paying attention to it, oof. What do you think will happen in a society only of ENTJs? Well, it wouldn't work. They would literally kill each other. Literally. Because at some point, you will not be able to progress further up in your society unless the person above you is gone. And if it's the same kind of person you are, in that they will never quit their job or they'll never quit their position unless they get something beneficial out of it, then in many cases they'll just stay there. And so your only real option is to make sure that they take an early retirement, as one might say. So it doesn't work. You can have a society of introverted sensors, though. That'll absolutely work out. INFP having fun. They latch on like a barnacle. They can. Usually, when I get an INFP in the Discord and we start talking, well, they'll keep talking and they'll continue to talk and they'll talk some more, and then you won't get a word in edgewise, and then they'll just keep talking, and then it eventually devolves into how they feel about what they're talking about, and then they keep talking, and then by the time before you realize it, half the people in the Discord have left the voice chat. Oh, she's gonna go cook dinner. You think that an INFP male wants to date a lot of different people? I think they want one dream woman, and they are a type that is looking for that. Yeah, I've never heard of an INFP male that was telling me about how they wanted to have their own harem. No, they want a fantasy relationship with just the one person, and then live the rest of their lives happily ever after, like in a fairy tale. I've never heard of them talking about how they want to date a lot of different women. They would rather just have the one. Granted, I also hear about INFP males not getting a lot of dates, so there's that as well. Let's see here. Yeah, that was a fine game, I suppose. What else?
Don't forget the mods.
The mods. Oh, the mods. Yeah, the mods. Thank you.
No problem.
Let's see. Let's just do that real quick and see if that actually works with the game running. Nope. Thank you. Let's see. More questions about ENTJs, since that was vaguely the topic. If there isn't, then, ask me about whatever. I'm available. Yeah, I guess. No, hang on. Close the game client. That's fine. No, as an ENTP, I mean, the idea of having a harem is always appealing. To always have a bunch of different, let's say, perspectives available at all times. But that's just not how society works. So
why didn't you move to the Middle East and then get your own harem?
That takes a lot of money and effort. And I have to convert to Islam or whatever. So.
India?
Is that normal out in India to have more than one wife?
Yeah.
Now, see, that's the thing. It's a wife. No, I think there's a difference between having a harem and having a wife or multiple wives.
Well, there's this man that had how many? He had 100 and something kids with different women, and they all lived in the same house. I don't even know how he knows the name of his children.
The amount of money that you would need for all those kids, that's oof.
Yeah.
I'll think about it after I get rich.
Yeah, but he had 39 wives and 94 children. 94 children. Yep.
That is mighty impressive. Can you think of a scenario where an ISFJ can be really interested in MBTI? Really interested? If they grew up in a family where other people, in the family were talking about MBTI and it was a normal part of life, then they would be, at the very least, they would be knowledgeable about it. But whether or not they would be interested, it's possible. I've never met an ISFJ that grew up in a family or in an environment where MBTI was a main topic of conversation. So let's see here. Why does introverted sensing in the fourth position cause ENTPs or ENFPs to be hypochondriacs? Is it because they can't tell what's going on internally and their extroverted intuition goes wild? They can have moments of paranoia. Most certainly, that can absolutely happen, because an ENTP or an ENFP, initially in their lives, they're not concerned about this. They're more concerned about what's going on, in the world, and coming up with ideas and focusing on the perspectives of things in the outside world. So paranoia can totally happen. especially combined with the right drugs. But for them to just always be hypochondriacs, no, that's not something that they would be doing. They would have to be in a very strange set of circumstances to be considered a hypochondriac. Only if you can provide them with their needs. Yeah, that makes sense. You shouldn't have 4 wives unless you can take care of all of them. How are ENTJs different from ENFJs? Well, they're different in just the 2 functions. So it's the end functions: extroverted thinking versus extroverted feeling, and then introverted thinking versus introverted feeling. So they're generally different in that ENFJs enjoy talking to people. Like, that's their life. Their main focus is the social environments and managing social environments. So they enjoy, having people around. Now, it doesn't mean that they don't have their own plans and goals for things, but they like to do them cooperatively. They enjoy getting the things that they want through the use of other people. Being nice and kind and, those things, just doing whatever it takes to get them to, manipulate them in whatever ways was necessary. But ENTJs don't care about that person. They don't necessarily care to have large social circles. That's not a part of, their success in life, so they don't care. But for the most part, ENTJs and ENFJs, they're very focused on their personal goals in life, whatever they happen to be. Now, for an ENTJ, their goal is generally to become wealthy and respected. Whereas in ENFJ, the ones that I have spoken to, they are just more concerned with putting themselves in positions to have high up friends, essentially. They of course enjoy the prestige of certain occupations and whatnot, but they're usually not super concerned with becoming hyper wealthy. Now, Oprah being an example of a very successful ENFJ, she has taken her ability to be a cult leader to the next level, and she was controlling a vast number of women through her talk show. So there was that. Would an ENTP rather read a book or write a book? Oh, write one. Generally speaking.
Eventually.
Yeah, I like writing. I like writing stories, generally speaking. Now, granted, all my stories are like supernatural in nature. I don't do the slice of life thing. I'm not that interested. But when it comes to supernatural stuff, I love writing about that, coming up with mythologies and things. I'm not an art appreciator. I'm an art creator. That's what I tell people. Whether or not there's any truth to that, thought about writing a book before, but I'd never get it finished. Yeah, I know. I've rewritten one of my books like 4 times, and can never seem to get it right. I accidentally crashed into an island. It's sad. That's Brianna. I remember her. Was she there on the last stream? I can't remember.
Yes. Brianna is typically in the streams.
Yeah, that I remember.
Mm-hmm.
I tell people that are, if you're having a hard time writing a story, I usually tell them to write, just to write a sentence out for the story. Then, every day or something, every other day, write a sentence, or maybe write a paragraph if you're so bold. And then, at the end of the month, you can look at what you wrote and see if it's worth anything.
Yeah, writing requires consistencies, or else consistency, or else you get bad.
Having a muse or having a particular inspiration for the book helps as well, but that's gonna fade eventually. So,
yeah.
Let's see, but yeah, I'd rather write a book than read it. As a matter of fact, I haven't read a book, let's say read a a fiction novel or whatever it's been. Let's see, I read Ven's book.
Oh my God, let's not go there. Okay, he thinks they're plot holes because the guy is like a sensitive man. He's an ISFP male, so
Hmm.
whatever. Some women like ISFP males. Like
That's
if you're
no,
in a
that's not the problem. The problem was is that he was like some business owner that was like managing like three different companies, but is always sad all the
he's not
time.
always sad. No, he's not.
Just super
He's
sad
not.
constantly and
He's
always
not. There
takes
was
people's
one
feelings
scene.
into consideration. It's like if you're taking people, you can't be some super successful, business manager of like three different companies and not be super cutthroat about things. Like you can't have successful businesses and not be a little bit cutthroat. You there are too many things you have to do.
Well, he is a
Morals and
little bit.
values have no place
He's
in
going
money
to
making.
learn. He's going to learn. Yeah, but he comes from this rich family, and that's all he knows. Like he has to learn that. Okay,
Well, apparently
he's
he
a
knows
baby still.
business management as well, which would also require that he be less
Yeah,
less caring and considerate about people's feelings.
yeah, but he
But
has
but
other
he'll
people that
just
does
he'll
most of
just
those things
hook
for
up with
him.
some random girl on the beach and then sleep there. And I'm like, wait, you're managing three companies right now, and you have the time to just sit out on a beach with some
It was
random
the
female
first.
all
It
night?
was the
Like what?
first break in months. Like he hadn't had a break in years. Okay,
Whatever.
and he took the first one with her.
I'm just saying that people that manage three businesses don't take breaks. Even on their vacation time, they're
Okay,
still working. That's
that is
that
true.
was that was the plot hole, and it just
That
it was
is
some kind
true.
of weird fantasy world where that was okay. I guess I don't know what else to say about it. So that was my
Females
only
like
gripe.
reading about that. That was the only
Also the
one.
main character was a predator. The woman, she was
Okay.
a straight up
Yeah.
predator,
Yes, yeah. Well, what else is wrong with this story?
which
I
I
want to know.
admired. I admired that she was more predatory about things, but it was just that one part. That was
Just
bothering
that
by.
one.
Just the one part. That's all. Let's see. I want to write a book, but my INFP friends always judge me for that because I hate reading, and they say you have to be a big reader to be a good writer. Well,
Yeah.
that's gotta be a little bit silly, right? Because there's been,
No.
I mean, if that were the case, then how would you know how would you know what a great book was? Like at the very beginning, right before a great book was ever made, someone had to just
Hmm.
create it out of nothing, right?
Well, yes, but it is very common in the writing community to say that actually. Stephen King actually says it as well.
Okay. Well,
And
I
a lot
believe
of
the extroverted thinking there. Yeah, I'm sure that's what they believe to be the case, most certainly. But I don't think it's necessary for you to be a big reader to be a good writer. You just have
well,
to
the
tell a good
reason why
story. That's it. You have to be a good storyteller. That's actually what you need to be a good writer. You need to be a good storyteller. So if you can pull that off, then you're good.
yeah, but you want to know what other people are looking for, right? So because it's not just about you writing; it's about like what sells commercially. Your book can be great, but nobody's going to buy it as it doesn't follow if it doesn't follow the tropes.
Well, it depends on your
That's the
demographic, right?
problem. Yeah, but unless if it's nonfiction or fiction, that typically you want to follow like a specific kind of trope. And like
Yeah,
with
if that's
anything that
what you
you
want to
do
do.
to grow a business, yeah.
If that's what you want to do, then do it. I refuse.
See, I had to read a lot about those kind of books because I don't understand how someone can be so rational and like how in some situations with their feelings. So I had to kind of like study it and try to act that way, you know? So I could kind of write about it
Hmm.
or express it better because I didn't know how to put that on paper. On paper, yeah.
There you go. Uh, let's see here. I knew that guy.
But Brianna, I wouldn't judge you.
Nope. Let's see. What else do we got? Ven, do you have any questions? Don't worry, I already know you don't. It's just a formality, really.
I was gonna ask a question, but now
But
no.
we were going to talk about ENTJs today, and there wasn't a whole lot to say about them. They're like INTJs, but they have less in the way of morals and ethics and principles. So other than that, they're more or less the same. However, they are very concerned with their progress in life. So much more. They care way more about their the power and authority that they have in life. The ENTJs do.
Yes, they're very interesting creatures. But I think we did talk. A lot of people asked a lot of questions about ENTJs, so I would consider this successful.
It was successful. There was some questions about ENTJs, possibly
There's a
more
lot.
than we would normally get on the subject. Possibly.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and it helped that before the stream we were actually talking about that on the server. Like we
We
were
were talking
discussing
about it, yeah.
ENTJs. Yeah.
All right. Well, it looks like I would say that the stream's dying down. So, any last minute questions, and then we'll call it a day today. About anything.
Don't forget to submit your applications to get typed, and we might be starting classes in a month. So that's also a new project that's coming, guys. If you're interested, you can always ask me questions.
Yep, and I'm always available on the Discord. You just have to @me. me. I don't get added very often, but that's how you get a hold of me. Just @me. Because it's hard for me to pay attention to the Discord all day. But yeah. If that is it, thank you, Ven, for once again being my co-host today. Thank you, everyone, for all of your questions. And if you have any more questions, I am on the Discord, as I said. Until then, are we going to do a stream tomorrow?
Bye-bye. I believe so. Are you going to?
Yeah, it won't bother me. I don't think, anyway.
Okay, well, then, yes, there's another stream tomorrow at the same time, 12 PST.
Quite plausibly. Barring any stupid things happening, then yes, that's what we'll do. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.